For my birthday, my wife left a frozen pizza on the counter and sent a congrats text to me. A week earlier, my wife and her friends threw my best friend a backyard bash with fireworks and a drone photographer. When I asked why, my wife shrugged. "You're not really the celebrating type." I didn't reply. I didn't eat. I just grabbed my bag and walked out the door. That night, my wife's mom texted, "Why's everyone freaking out? My name's Miles Carter, and I need you to understand something right off the bat. I'm not the kind of guy who throws tantrums or makes dramatic exits over stupid stuff. I'm reasonable. I'm level-headed. I'm the guy who remembers to bring the potato salad to the barbecue even though nobody asked me to, and everyone's going to eat the store-bought mac and cheese instead. I'm dependable, you know? The human equivalent of a Honda Civic. Reliable, efficient, and apparently so boring that my own wife forgot I existed on my 34th birthday. Let me paint you a picture of how this absolute masterpiece of a day unfolded. I woke up that morning with the kind of cautious optimism that only a married man on his birthday can muster. Like maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. Maybe Tara would surprise me with breakfast in bed, or at least remember to say happy birthday before checking her Instagram feed. I'm not asking for a parade here, folks. Just basic human acknowledgement that I'd successfully survived another trip around the sun without getting hit by a bus or developing a gambling addiction. I came downstairs around 8 in the morning, showered and dressed like it was a special occasion, because in my delusional little world, it was. The kitchen was empty. No balloons. No streamers. No cards propped up against the coffee maker with hearts drawn in Sharpie. Just the usual mess from Tara's midnight snack raid. Empty yogurt containers on the counter, a spoon in the sink, and the faint smell of something that might have been cheese but could have also been regret. I checked my phone. Nothing. Not a text, not a call, not even one of those automated birthday messages from my dentist's office reminding me I'm due for a cleaning. I made my own coffee, shocking development, I know, and sat at the kitchen table wondering if maybe she was planning some kind of surprise. Maybe she was waiting until evening. Maybe she'd arranged something thoughtful and sweet, and I was being paranoid. Spoiler alert, I wasn't being paranoid. I was being stupidly hopeful, which is somehow worse. The day crawled by like a three-legged turtle crossing a highway. I worked from home, answered emails, sat through a video conference where my boss Keith asked me to circle back on a project I'd already finished twice. Around noon, I checked my phone again. Still nothing. By 3 o'clock, I was starting to think maybe I'd imagined my own birthday. Maybe I was having some kind of existential crisis where I'd fabricated the entire concept of celebrating the anniversary of my birth. But no, Facebook confirmed it. 17 notifications from people I barely remembered from high school, all wishing me a blessed day, with champagne glass emojis they definitely copy-pasted from last year. At 6:30 in the evening, I heard Tara's car pull into the driveway. My heart did this pathetic little hopeful jump, like a golden retriever hearing the word walk. I stayed in the living room, pretending to read a book I wasn't actually absorbing, waiting for her to come in with a cake, or flowers, or literally anything that suggested she knew what day it was. She walked in carrying grocery bags and her gym duffel. "Hey," she said, not looking at me. Just hey, like I was the mailman or the guy who bags groceries at Kroger. She dumped the bags on the kitchen counter with the enthusiasm of someone taking out the trash, and I heard the telltale sound of frozen food hitting laminate. I waited. I gave her a solid 5 minutes to remember, to suddenly smack her forehead and say, "Oh my God, Miles, I'm so sorry, happy birthday." But instead, she just unpacked the groceries, stuck a few things in the fridge, and left one item sitting on the counter. Then she grabbed her phone and disappeared upstairs. Curiosity, or maybe masochism, got the better of me. I walked into the kitchen, and there it was, folks. The piece de resistance. The grand gesture. The culmination of 10 years of marriage, of frozen pizza. Not even a good frozen pizza, mind you. We're talking bottom shelf, cardboard crust, cheese that might be plastic situation. Still sealed in its plastic wrap. Not preheated. Not even accompanied by a note, or a half-hearted, "I'll cook this later." Just sitting there on the counter like an afterthought from a sitcom where the laugh track died of disappointment years ago. I stared at that pizza for a solid minute, waiting for the punchline. Surely this was a joke. Surely she'd come downstairs any second and say gotcha, and pull out the real surprise. But the only thing that came was a text notification on my phone. From Tara, who was literally upstairs. Congrats, Miles. 2 words. 14 characters including the comma and period. No emojis. No exclamation point. No happy birthday or love you. Or sorry I'm the worst wife in the continental United States. Just congrats, Miles. Like I'd finished a moderately difficult crossword puzzle or successfully parallel parked on the first try. Here's where the story gets really fun, though. See, I'm not the kind of person who forgets details, especially when those details involve public humiliation and financial waste. Exactly 1 week earlier, 7 days before my frozen pizza extravaganza, Tara had thrown my best friend Jordan the birthday party of the century. I'm talking backyard extravaganza with a capital E. She'd rented a tent, hired a catering company that served fancy sliders and truffle fries, set up a champagne fountain that looked like it cost more than my car, and, my personal favorite detail, hired a drone photographer who nearly decapitated Jordan's cousin Greg, trying to get the perfect aerial shot of everyone singing happy birthday. I'd helped set up for that party. I'd strung lights. I'd moved furniture. I'd made 3 trips to the liquor store because apparently 1 bottle of top-shelf vodka wasn't enough for 15 people. And when it was all over, Tara had beamed with pride, posting approximately 47 photos on Instagram with captions like celebrating this amazing human, and nothing's too good for the people we love. But when I'd asked her, casually, carefully, trying not to sound like a needy child, why my birthday couldn't maybe have a fraction of that energy, she'd looked at me like I'd suggested we sacrifice a goat in the living room. You're not really the celebrating type, Miles, she'd said, already scrolling through her phone. You've always been more low-key. Oh right, my bad. I forgot that I was supposed to earn affection by providing pyrotechnics and nearly killing people with camera equipment. Silly me for thinking that maybe, just maybe, my own wife might give half a damn about the day I was born. That night, standing in my kitchen staring at that frozen pizza while the house settled into its usual evening silence, something inside me just clicked. Not in an angry way, not even in a sad way. It was more like a switch flipping, a decision making itself without much input from my brain. I walked upstairs, pulled my old duffel bag from the closet, and started packing. Toothbrush, clothes for a few days, laptop charger, the essentials. Tara didn't even look up from her phone when I zipped the bag. Going somewhere, she asked, thumbs still flying across the screen. Yeah, I said. Somewhere that doesn't smell like freezer burn and broken promises. I walked out of that house without yelling, without slamming doors, without any of the dramatic flourishes you see in movies. Just me, my duffel bag, my dignity, and the haunting sound of an untouched pizza crust cracking somewhere in the kitchen behind me, probably buckling under the weight of its own mediocrity. Best birthday gift I ever gave myself, honestly. The first thing you need to know about checking into a cheap hotel at 9:30 on a Tuesday night with nothing but a duffel bag and the emotional baggage of a failed marriage is that nobody working the front desk is paid enough to care about your drama. And honestly, that's exactly what I needed. I pulled into the parking lot of the Sunset Inn, which, by the way, faced east and hadn't seen a legitimate sunset since probably 1987, and sat in my car for a solid 10 minutes just staring at the neon vacancy sign flickering like it was having its own personal crisis. The place looked like the kind of establishment where you'd find a motivational speaker who'd hit rock bottom or a traveling salesman who'd made some questionable life choices. Perfect. I'd fit right in. The lobby smelled like industrial cleaner and someone's microwave burrito, which somehow felt more honest than my own house ever did. Behind the front desk sat a guy who looked about 22, wearing a name tag that said Brandon in all caps like he was yelling his own identity into existence. He had earbuds in and was clearly watching something on his phone that was way more interesting than my personal breakdown. I dinged the little bell on the counter. You know, one of those brass ones that sounds way more cheerful than any bell has a right to be. And Brandon looked up with the expression of someone who'd just been interrupted during the good part of a video. Help you? He asked, pulling out one earbud but leaving the other in, just in case I wasn't worth his full attention. Yeah, I need a room for the night, I said. Maybe a few nights, actually. Haven't quite worked out the details of my new living situation yet. Brandon started typing on his ancient desktop computer that probably ran on Windows XP and prayers. King or 2 queens. Just a king is fine. I'm flying solo on this adventure. He nodded like he'd seen this exact scenario play out 100 times before. Credit card. I handed it over, and while he was processing everything, he glanced up at me with this look that was half curiosity, half pity. Celebrating something? He asked, and I couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic or genuinely couldn't read the room. Yeah, I said, unable to stop myself from smiling. My emotional independence. Brandon paused, looked at me for a second, then cracked the smallest grin. Good for you, man. Room 237. Second floor. Take the stairs to your left. Elevator's broken. Of course it is, I said, grabbing my key card. Would have been suspicious if everything worked perfectly. Ice machine's on your floor, he added. Also broken. But there's a vending machine that sometimes accepts dollar bills. You're really selling this place, Brandon. Hey, it's $89 a night, and we don't ask questions. That's the whole pitch. Fair enough. I grabbed my duffel bag and headed for the stairs, climbing up to the second floor while trying not to think about how many life decisions had led me to this exact moment. The hallway carpet was that special pattern that hotels use specifically to hide stains. You know, the one where it looks like someone threw a kaleidoscope into a blender and then vomited it onto the floor. Room 237 was at the end of the hall, right next to what I could only assume was either another guest having a very loud phone conversation or someone watching a documentary about angry geese. I slid the key card into the door slot. Red light. Tried again. Red light. Third time's the charm. Green light, and I was in. The room was exactly what you'd expect from a place called the Sunset and that charged $89 a night. One queen bed with a comforter that had probably witnessed things that would make a crime scene investigator quit their job. A TV from 2003 bolted to the dresser. A bathroom the size of a shoe box with water pressure that could best be described as apologetic. And that smell. That universal hotel smell that's somehow a combination of cleaning products, other people's lives, and existential dread. But here's the thing that hit me as I dropped my duffel bag on the questionable carpet and looked around. The silence was absolutely beautiful. I'm not talking about the absence of noise. I could hear the guy next door still arguing with someone about parking tickets. And the air conditioning unit under the window was making sounds like it was trying to communicate with dolphins. No, I'm talking about the absence of expectations. The absence of someone yelling at me because I left water spots on the bathroom counter. The absence of my mother-in-law Linda giving me one of her trademark lectures about what it means to be a provider while sipping wine that I'd paid for. I sat on the edge of the bed and it made this concerning creaking sound, but honestly, I didn't care. For the first time in what felt like years, I was existing in a space where nobody needed me to be anything other than a guy in a cheap hotel room. I wasn't disappointing anyone. I wasn't failing to meet someone's unspoken standards. I was just Miles, sitting on a questionable mattress, finally breathing air that didn't taste like resentment. I ordered a pizza, a real one this time, from an actual pizza place, because apparently that's what freedom tastes like, and sat cross-legged on the bed watching some terrible reality show about people buying storage units. The pizza arrived 40 minutes later, hot and excessive and completely unnecessary, and I ate half of it while laughing at grown adults fighting over a box of old Christmas decorations. Around midnight, just as I was considering calling it a night and seeing if the bed was as uncomfortable as it looked, my phone started buzzing like an angry hornet. Text messages started rolling in, one after another, and I watched them populate my screen with the kind of morbid fascination usually reserved for watching car crashes on YouTube. The first one was from Tara, "Where are you?" Followed immediately by, "Miles, this isn't funny." Then, "Can you at least let me know you're okay?" But the real winner, the absolute cherry on top of this dysfunctional Sunday, came from Linda, Tara's mother, the reigning queen of passive aggression, the woman who could make "bless your heart" sound like a death threat. Her text read, "Why's everyone freaking out?" I stared at that message for a long moment, letting the absurdity of it sink in. Why was everyone freaking out? Really, Linda? That was the question she was leading with. Not, "Is Miles okay?" or "What happened?" but a casual inquiry about why people were having emotional reactions to the fact that I'd left. Like I'd missed book club or forgotten to RSVP to a baby shower. Oh, I don't know, Linda. Maybe because your daughter treated her husband like expired leftovers? Maybe because I spent my birthday staring at a frozen pizza while contemplating the slow death of my dignity? Maybe because I finally grew a spine and decided I deserved better than being the supporting character in my own life. But I didn't type any of that. Instead, I did something that felt revolutionary. I turned off my phone, just held down the power button and watched the screen go dark, cutting off the incoming tide of guilt trips and manipulation attempts. The silence that followed was profound. It was the kind of silence that makes you realize how much noise you've been tolerating. I brushed my teeth with the complimentary toothpaste that tasted like minty regret, changed into an old t-shirt, and climbed into the hotel bed. The sheets were scratchy and smelled like industrial detergent, but they were mine for the night. Nobody was going to roll over and complain that I was taking up too much space. Nobody was going to sigh dramatically because I was reading too late with the lamp on. The air conditioning unit hummed and rattled, occasionally making sounds like it was trying to achieve sentience, and somewhere down the hall someone was watching what sounded like an action movie at full volume. The guy next door had finally stopped arguing about parking tickets and was now snoring loud enough to register on the Richter scale. And you know what? It was perfect. Every weird sound, every questionable smell, every moment of this absolutely ridiculous situation was perfect because it was mine. I'd chosen it. I'd walked out of a life that was slowly suffocating me and into a cheap hotel room that smelled like other people's mistakes, and I felt oddly free. As I drifted off to sleep, I had this thought that made me smile in the dark. I hadn't burned that frozen pizza on my way out. I hadn't thrown a tantrum or broken anything or left a dramatic note. I just left. And somehow, that quiet exit felt more powerful than any grand gesture could have been. Tomorrow I'd have to figure out real logistics. Where I'd actually stay, what I'd tell people, how I'd navigate this new reality. But tonight I was just a guy in room 237 of the Sunset Inn, falling asleep to the sound of malfunctioning air conditioning and distant action movies, feeling like maybe, just maybe, I'd finally done something right. Waking up in a cheap hotel room is a weird experience, especially when you're not there for a business trip or because you're having an affair with someone named Crystal who works in pharmaceutical sales. I woke up to sunlight streaming through curtains so thin they were basically decorative suggestions, and for about 3 seconds I forgot where I was. Then reality came crashing back like a hangover, except instead of tequila regrets, it was life choices. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand, which wobbled like it was one strong breeze away from collapsing, and made the mistake of turning it on. 47 notifications. 47. My phone literally vibrated in my hand for a solid 30 seconds like it was having a seizure. Messages from Tara, from Linda, from Jordan, from Tara's sister Rebecca, who I hadn't heard from since she asked me to help her move in 2019 and then never said thank you. Everyone's suddenly very concerned about my whereabouts now that I wasn't around to be conveniently ignored. I ignored all of them and opened my banking app instead, because apparently I'm the kind of person who starts their morning with financial anxiety instead of coffee like a normal human being. That's when I saw it. The beautiful, infuriating reality of my situation, laid out in neat little rows of automatic payments and monthly subscriptions. Netflix, $15.99 per month. In my name. Hulu, $14.99 per month. My credit card. Disney Plus, $10.99 per month. You guessed it, me again. HBO Max, $15.99 per month. Miles Carter, Party of One, paying for everyone's binge-watching habits. The internet bill, $89.99 per month. My account, cell phone plan, the family plan with 4 lines, $180 per month. And here's the kicker. One of those lines was for Jordan, my best friend, who apparently had been on my family plan for 2 years because he was between jobs, and I was such a good dude about it. Another line was for Linda, because of course Tara's mother couldn't possibly pay for her own phone service when she had a son-in-law who was just hemorrhaging money anyway. Spotify Premium Family Plan, $16.99 per month. I didn't even use Spotify. I was an Apple Music guy. But Tara insisted we needed Spotify for her workout playlists and her mom's audiobooks and Jordan's podcast subscriptions. The home security system, $49.99 per month. Protecting a house I wasn't even living in anymore. I kept scrolling, and the hits just kept coming. The cloud storage subscription. The meal kit delivery service that Tara used exactly twice before deciding cooking was not her vibe. The streaming service for fitness classes that Linda used to watch yoga videos she could have found for free on YouTube. Even the premium account for some recipe app that I'm 90% sure was being used by Jordan's girlfriend to plan her Instagram-worthy brunches. I sat there in that hotel bed, staring at my phone, doing the mental math. I was spending roughly $450 a month on services that primarily benefited everyone except me. $450. That's a car payment. That's a decent vacation fund. That's a therapy session every week with enough left over for the good coffee. And this is where it gets really beautiful. I realized something that made me laugh out loud in that depressing hotel room. I had all the passwords. Every single account, every subscription, every service. They were all in my email, tied to my credit cards, accessible through my phone. I was the gatekeeper to their entire digital existence, and I'd been so busy being the reliable guy that I'd never even thought about what would happen if I just stopped. A plan started forming in my head, and let me tell you, it was the kind of plan that made me feel like a supervillain in the best possible way. Not an evil supervillain, more like a chaotic, neutral character who'd finally had enough of being everyone's financial safety net. I wasn't going to cancel everything immediately, because that would be rash and impulsive, and despite recent events, I'm still fundamentally a person who thinks things through. No, I was going to give them 3 days. 72 hours. A generous warning period that they wouldn't even know they were getting. In 3 days, I'd start canceling subscriptions. One by one. Methodically. Starting with the least essential and working my way up to the big ones. The streaming services would go first. Goodbye, Netflix, Sayonara, HBO Max. Then the phone plan. I'd port my number to a new individual plan and let the other 3 lines figure out their own situation. The internet bill would be last, because I'm not a complete monster, but it was definitely on the chopping block. I got out of bed, showered in the world's tiniest bathroom with water pressure that felt like someone spitting on me from a distance, and got dressed in yesterday's clothes because I'd packed in a hurry and hadn't really thought about the practicalities of extended hotel living. My reflection in the mirror looked tired but somehow lighter, like I'd put down a backpack I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it was there. The coffee situation at the Sunset Inn was about what you'd expect from an $89 a night establishment. There was a complimentary breakfast set up in the lobby that consisted of a waffle maker that looked like it had seen combat, some sad-looking fruit in a bowl, and a coffee dispenser that gurgled and hissed like it was summoning demons. I grabbed a styrofoam cup, because of course they use styrofoam, environmental consciousness costs extra, and filled it with coffee that looked like it could strip paint off a car. Brandon was still at the front desk, or maybe he was there again. I couldn't tell if he'd worked an all-night shift or just really loved his job. He looked up from his phone and gave me a nod. Survivor of room 237. How'd you sleep? Like someone who finally made a decision, I said. That's weirdly specific, but I respect it. I grabbed a handful of those little creamer cups and a packet of sugar that was probably older than Brandon, and walked outside to the parking lot. The morning air was crisp and cool, and the sky was that particular shade of blue that makes you think maybe things aren't completely terrible. I leaned against my car, popped the lid off my terrible coffee, and took a sip. It tasted like burnt dreams and questionable life choices, but it was mine, and I wasn't sharing it with anyone. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, and started making a list. Not a grocery list or a to-do list, but a revenge list. Okay, revenge is a strong word. Let's call it an accountability list. An actions have consequences list. Maybe you should have thought about this before you gave me frozen pizza for my birthday list. Day 1. Today research individual phone plans. Look into month-to-month apartment rentals. Call Maya about that job offer. Drink terrible hotel coffee and feel smug about it. Day 2. Port phone number to new plan. Change all passwords. Update billing addresses. Forward mail to somewhere that isn't my old house. Day 3. Cancel Netflix. Cancel Hulu. Cancel Disney Plus. Cancel HBO Max. Cancel Spotify. Remove unauthorized users from family phone plan. Sit back and wait for the chaos. Day 4. Cancel internet. Watch the world burn from a safe distance. I stood there in that hotel parking lot, holding my styrofoam cup of coffee that tasted like someone's abandoned hopes, and raised it in a toast to absolutely no one. To new beginnings, I said out loud, not caring if anyone heard me, and to finally not funding adult children disguised as in-laws. A woman getting into her car 3 spots over gave me a weird look, but I didn't care. Let her think I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was having a breakthrough. And the two things look remarkably similar from the outside. If sarcasm burned calories, I'd have been shredded by lunchtime. If pettiness was an Olympic sport, I'd be bringing home gold. But instead, I was just a guy in a hotel parking lot, drinking the worst coffee known to mankind, planning the most passive-aggressive exit strategy in the history of modern relationships. I finished my coffee, tossed the cup in the trash. Because unlike some people, I clean up my own messes and got back in my car. I had a phone plan to research, an email to send to Maya about that job offer, and a list of subscriptions that were about to learn what unauthorized charges meant. The best part? They had no idea what was coming. They were probably sitting at home right now, streaming their shows, scrolling through their phones, completely oblivious to the fact that their digital lifestyle was on a 3-day countdown to obsolescence. I pulled out of the Sunset parking lot with a smile on my face, headed toward the nearest gas station for better coffee and maybe a breakfast burrito that wouldn't judge my life choices. The radio was playing some pop song about breaking free and finding yourself, and for once, the universe's sense of irony felt appropriate instead of insulting. 3 days. That's all they had left. 3 days of blissful ignorance before reality came knocking, and I wasn't going to be there to answer the door for them. The thing about executing a perfectly petty plan is that the waiting period is almost better than the actual revenge. It's like knowing you have chocolate cake in the fridge, but deciding to save it for later. The anticipation is half the pleasure. For 2 whole days, I existed in this beautiful bubble of calm where I knew exactly what was coming and nobody else had a clue. I spent those 48 hours in a state of zen-like peace that I haven't experienced since before I got married. I woke up when I wanted to wake up. I ate meals at weird times because there was nobody around to judge me for having leftover Chinese food at 10 in the morning. I watched whatever I wanted on my laptop without someone sighing dramatically because I wasn't interested in another documentary about minimalist tiny homes or whatever wellness trend Tara was pretending to care about that week. On day 1 of the calm, I went to a diner about 5 miles from the hotel. One of those classic American places with red vinyl booths and a laminated menu that's probably been the same since 1995. The waitress was named Dolores, according to her name tag, and she had the energy of someone who'd seen everything and was no longer impressed by human behavior. I ordered the biggest breakfast they had: pancakes, eggs, bacon, hash browns, toast, and coffee that actually tasted like coffee instead of punishment. Hungry or heartbroken? Dolores asked, not even looking up from her order pad. Can it be both? I said. She cracked a smile. Rough week. You could say that. But it's getting better. Good, she said, pouring my coffee. Life's too short to stay miserable, especially when there are pancakes. Wise woman, Dolores. I left her a $20 tip because sometimes you meet people who restore your faith in humanity, and they deserve to know it. I spent the afternoon driving around town, reacquainting myself with a city I'd been living in for years but hadn't really seen. When you're stuck in a routine, work, home, obligations, repeat, you stop noticing things. You forget that there are actual places to explore, coffee shops you've never tried, parks you've never walked through. I went to a bookstore and bought 3 novels I'd been meaning to read for years. I sat in a park and watched people jog by with their dogs, looking aggressively healthy and happy in that way that usually annoyed me, but somehow didn't today. My phone buzzed occasionally with messages from Tara. Nothing urgent, just the usual stuff. Did you pay the electric bill? And where's the receipt for the lawnmower repair? And my personal favorite, can you pick up milk on your way home? On your way home. Like I was just running errands and would be back any minute to resume my position as the household's administrative assistant and ATM machine. I didn't respond to any of them. Radio silence. It was remarkable how liberating it felt to just not engage. For years, I'd trained myself to respond immediately to every text, every request, every minor emergency. Pavlov's dog had nothing on me. But now I was learning that I could just let my phone buzz and the world would keep spinning. On day 2, I called Maya about the job offer. Maya Chun had been my boss when I worked as a tutor during my last year of college, back when I still thought I might do something interesting with my life before I got sucked into corporate mediocrity. She'd started her own tutoring company in our college town about 3 hours north, And every few months, she'd send me an email saying there was a position open if I ever wanted to escape whatever soul-crushing situation I'd gotten myself into. Miles Carter, she said when she picked up, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Please tell me you're finally taking me up on my offer. How'd you know? I asked. Because you're calling me on a Wednesday morning instead of sending your usual polite email declining. Something's changed. You could say that. Got any openings for a guy who's extremely qualified to teach test prep and moderately qualified to make terrible life decisions? Maya laughed. When can you start? We talked for 45 minutes about logistics, salary, benefits, all the boring adult stuff that somehow felt exciting because it represented an actual escape route. She had an apartment above the office that was vacant, month-to-month rent, fully furnished. It's not fancy, she warned me. Previous tenant was a grad student who thought throw pillows were a personality trait. But it's yours if you want it. I'll take it, I said, not even asking to see pictures. At this point, anywhere that wasn't connected to my old life sounded like paradise. You sure? Don't you want to talk to your wife about relocating? Maya, if I wanted to talk to my wife about things, I wouldn't be planning to move 3 hours away. There was a pause. Fair enough. I'll email you the lease agreement. Welcome back to the team, Miles. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the hotel parking lot and just breathed. I had a job. I had a place to live. I had an actual plan that extended beyond hiding in a cheap hotel and drinking questionable coffee. Things were coming together in a way that felt almost surreal. That evening, I treated myself to a nice dinner at a steakhouse, the kind of place Tara always said was too expensive for a random weeknight, but somehow wasn't too expensive when her friends wanted to celebrate someone's promotion or engagement. I ordered a ribeye, medium rare, with a loaded baked potato and a beer that cost $12 but tasted like victory. The waiter asked if I was celebrating something, and I said, yeah, my upcoming unemployment and divorce, which made him laugh nervously and back away slowly. Worth it. I went back to the hotel, watched a movie on my laptop, and fell asleep feeling genuinely content. Tomorrow was day 3. Tomorrow, the subscriptions would start dropping like flies. Tomorrow, the chaos would begin, and I'd get to watch it unfold from a safe distance. But then tomorrow came early. At 7:43 a.m. I know the exact time because I checked my phone when it started buzzing like an angry hornet trapped in a jar. The texts started rolling in. And not the gentle, confused texts I'd been expecting. No, these were full-blown panic texts. Tara, hey, did you mess with the Wi-Fi? I smiled. It had begun. I was brushing my teeth when the next one came through. Tara, Miles, seriously, the internet isn't working and I have a Zoom call in 20 minutes. Then, 5 minutes later, Miles. My phone just stopped working. Like completely stopped. What did you do? I rinsed my mouth, taking my time, enjoying every second of this. Through the bathroom door, I could hear my phone absolutely losing its mind with notifications. By the time I walked back into the room, there were 17 new messages. 17. It was like Christmas morning. If Christmas morning involved watching your entire family realize they'd been financially cut off. Tara had progressed from confused to panicked. Miles, my phone's not working. None of our phones are working. What's happening? Linda had entered the chat. Miles, I don't know what's going on, but my phone service is out, and so is Tara's. Is there an outage? Jordan, good old Jordan, had sent. Dude, my phone line is dead. Did you forget to pay the bill? Did I forget? That's adorable, Jordan. I didn't forget anything. I remembered everything, actually. Every month I paid that bill. Every time you said, thanks, man, and never offered to contribute. I remembered all of it. Then came my favorite message of the morning, from Tara. My mom says I should call you. Please don't do anything crazy. I stared at that message for a long moment, savoring it like fine wine. Don't do anything crazy. That was rich coming from the woman who gave me frozen pizza for my birthday and expected me to stick around indefinitely funding everyone's digital lifestyle. Oh, Linda, I thought, if only you knew that my version of crazy was sitting quietly in a hotel room drinking coffee that tasted like burnt dreams and canceled subscriptions. If only you knew that my grand act of rebellion was simply choosing not to pay for things that didn't benefit me. The horror. The absolute chaos. I typed out my response with the care of someone crafting a masterpiece. No long explanation. No justification. No essay about feelings or boundaries. Just one simple emoji. Thumbs up. I hit send and watched the message deliver. One thumbs up. That's all they got. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, terrifies control freaks more than a complete non-reaction. My phone immediately started ringing. Tara. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Then Linda tried. Declined. Then Jordan. Rebecca. Even Tara's dad, Rick, who hadn't called me since he dialed me during Thanksgiving 2022. I turned my phone to silent, set it face down on the nightstand, and went to take a shower. Let them spiral. I had a checkout time to meet and a new life to start. There's something weirdly symbolic about packing your entire life into a Honda Accord and driving away from everything you've known for the past decade. It's like being in one of those indie movies where the protagonist has a revelation and just hits the road. Except instead of a cool vintage convertible and a carefully curated soundtrack, you've got a car that makes a weird rattling noise above 50 miles per hour and a playlist that keeps shuffling to breakup songs like your phone is trying to make a point. I checked out of the Sunset Inn at exactly 11 a.m., which was checkout time, because even in the midst of a life crisis, I'm still the kind of person who follows hotel policies. Brandon was at the desk again. Or still, I honestly couldn't tell anymore. And he gave me a little salute as I turned in my key card. Good luck out there, man, he said. Hope you find whatever you're looking for. Thanks, Brandon. Keep fighting the good fight with that waffle maker. It's a losing battle, but somebody's got to do it. I threw my duffel bag in the trunk, which also contained everything else I'd managed to pack in my hasty escape. A box of books, my laptop, 3 pairs of shoes, enough socks and underwear to last me until I either found a laundromat or gave up on society entirely. And a framed photo of my dog from childhood, because apparently even in the middle of a divorce, I'm still sentimental about a golden retriever who died in 2008. The drive north to my college town was supposed to take about 3 hours, but I was in no rush. For the first time in years, I had nowhere I needed to be at any specific time. No meetings. No obligations. No wife texting me a grocery list with 17 items that somehow all needed to be the organic version. Just me, the open road, and the distinct possibility that I was having either a breakthrough or a breakdown. The jury was still out. I merged onto the highway, and immediately my phone started ringing through the car's Bluetooth system. Tara's name flashed on the dashboard screen like a warning light. I hit decline and turned off Bluetooth entirely, because I was learning that sometimes the best response is no response at all. Let her think I'd driven into a tunnel. Let her think I'd dropped my phone in a lake. Let her think whatever she wanted. I was done providing explanations for my existence. The radio became my only companion, and it had apparently decided that today was Songs About Love Gone Wrong Day. Every station I flipped to was playing either a bitter breakup anthem or an overly optimistic song about finding yourself after heartbreak. At one point, I Will Survive came on, the Gloria Gaynor version, not some modern cover, and I cranked it up and sang along like I was auditioning for the world's saddest karaoke competition. A truck driver in the next lane looked over at me belting out lyrics about changing locks and growing strong, and I just nodded at him like this was completely normal behavior. He gave me a thumbs up. Brotherhood of the road, I guess. We've all been there, fighting our demons at 70 miles per hour while Gloria Gaynor provides the soundtrack. About an hour into the drive, I stopped at a rest area that had the aesthetic of a building that had given up on life sometime in the 90s. The bathroom smelled like broken dreams and industrial cleaner, and the vending machines looked like they might contain either snacks or anthrax. It was hard to tell. I grabbed a coffee from a machine that charged $3 for what tasted like someone's interpretation of what coffee might be, and stood outside watching families shuffle between minivans and SUVs. There was this one couple, probably in their 50s, and they moved around each other with this easy familiarity that made me realize I'd never had that with Tara. Every interaction we'd had in the last few years felt like a negotiation or a performance. This couple, though, the guy just handed his wife a napkin without her asking. She adjusted his collar without thinking about it. Small gestures that added up to something real. I wondered if Tara and I had ever had that, or if we'd just been playing house from the beginning, following some script about what marriage was supposed to look like without ever figuring out what we actually wanted it to be. Deep thoughts at a highway rest stop. That's where I was in life now. I got back in my car and kept driving, and the landscape slowly started to change. The sprawling suburbs gave way to smaller towns, then to actual countryside with farms and cows, and the kind of pastoral scenery that makes you understand why people write country songs. The further I got from the city, the lighter I felt, like I was literally driving away from weight I'd been carrying. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, silenced but still visible, and I could see notifications piling up. 53 messages. 53. I laughed out loud in my empty car, because what else are you supposed to do when your entire family loses their collective mind because you stop paying for their streaming services? 2.5 hours into the drive, I started seeing familiar landmarks. The billboard for that sketchy fireworks store that was always going out of business, but never actually closed. The exit for the state park where my college friends and I used to go hiking when we were pretending to be outdoorsy. The water tower painted to look like a giant basketball, because apparently in the 80s that seemed like a good idea. I took the exit for Millbrook, my old college town, and felt this weird mixture of nostalgia and hope. This place held memories of a version of me that still had potential before I'd settled into a comfortable life that turned out to be slowly suffocating me. The downtown area hadn't changed much. Same brick buildings, same locally owned shops trying desperately to compete with the strip mall on the highway, same coffee shop where I'd spent countless hours studying and pretending to understand philosophy. Actually, wait. The coffee shop was different. It used to be called The Daily Grind, but now the sign read June's Brew in cheerful yellow letters with a little sun logo. Cute. Probably new ownership trying to put a personal touch on things. I parked on Main Street, found a spot right in front, which never would have happened in the city, and sat in my car for a moment, watching people walk by. College students with backpacks looking stressed about midterms. Older folks moving at a slower pace, actually making eye contact with each other. A guy walking 3 dogs at once, and somehow making it look easy. This could work. This could actually work. I grabbed my wallet and headed into June's Brew, pushing open the door to the sound of a little bell chiming. An actual bell, not a recording. The place smelled like fresh coffee and baked goods and possibility. It was warm without being stuffy, busy without being crowded, and had that perfect coffee shop ambience that makes you want to stay for 3 hours with a laptop and pretend you're writing the next great American novel. Behind the counter was a woman about my age with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and an apron that said, "Powered by coffee and sarcasm." She was steaming milk for someone's latte with the focused concentration of a surgeon performing a delicate operation. When she looked up and saw me standing there, she smiled. And here's the thing that got me. It was a real smile. Not a customer service smile. Not a polite but exhausted smile. An actual, genuine, reaches your eyes kind of smile that made me realize I hadn't seen one of those directed at me in longer than I cared to admit. "Welcome to June's," she said. "What can I get you?" "Are you June?" I asked, already knowing the answer but needing to confirm that yes, some people actually name their businesses after themselves, and that's adorable. Guilty as charged. Opened this place 6 months ago and immediately regretted the pressure of having my name on everything. She grinned. "If the coffee's bad, it's a personal failure. If it's good, well, at least my ego gets a boost." "I'll take a large latte," I said. "And maybe a boost of optimism if you've got that on the menu." She laughed, a real laugh, the kind that sounds like someone actually found you funny instead of just being polite. "Rough day." "More like rough decade with a particularly terrible birthday as the grand finale," I said. "But I'm told coffee helps." June started making my latte, and I watched her work with the kind of casual competence that comes from doing something you actually enjoy. "Birthday, huh? Let me guess, someone forgot." Worse. Someone remembered but thought a frozen pizza still in its plastic wrap counted as a celebration. She stopped mid-pour and looked at me with this expression of genuine horror mixed with amusement. "You're joking." "I wish I was." Frozen pizza. Not even preheated. Just sitting on the counter like a sad monument to low expectations. June finished my latte and slid it across the counter, and I noticed she'd done one of those fancy leaf designs in the foam. "Well, mysterious frozen pizza guy, consider this latte my retroactive birthday present. On the house. You don't have to. I insist. Anyone who's been through the great frozen pizza incident of whatever year this happened deserves at least one free coffee." I took the latte and raised it in a toast. "To new beginnings and coffee shop owners who restore your faith in humanity." "I'll drink to that." she said, raising her own cup. Even though mine's decaf because I've already had 4 shots of espresso today and my heart is staging a rebellion. That laugh. Her laugh was the first genuine sound of joy I'd heard in months, and it felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd made the right decision driving north to start over. Day 3 arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train crashing through a nitroglycerin factory. I woke up in my car. Yeah, my actual car, parked behind June's coffee shop because I'd stayed until closing time talking to her about everything from terrible exes to the correct way to make a grilled cheese sandwich, and then realized it was too late to go check out Maya's apartment. June had said I could crash in my car in her parking lot, because apparently this town still believed in basic human decency. Wild concept. My phone had died sometime during the night, which was probably a blessing. I plugged it into my car charger and watched it come back to life with all the enthusiasm of someone watching a horror movie where you know the killer's behind the door. The screen lit up and immediately had a stroke trying to load all the notifications. 89 messages. 89. I had 89 unread messages, and it wasn't even 7 in the morning yet. I scrolled through them with the detached fascination of someone watching a reality show about people who hoard exotic animals. The progression was beautiful. A perfect arc from confusion to panic to anger to desperation. It was like watching the 5 stages of grief, except instead of accepting death, they were accepting the death of their unlimited streaming capabilities. The messages had started around midnight, which tracked. That's when Netflix does its thing where it boots you out and makes you sign back in. Except this time, there was no account to sign back into, because I'd canceled it at exactly 11:47 p.m. the previous night, while eating leftover pad thai in my hotel room. Tara, 12:03 a.m. Netflix won't load. Tara, 12:15 a.m. Seriously, Netflix is broken. Did you change the password? Tara, 12:47 a.m. Miles. Nothing is working. Not Netflix, not Hulu, nothing. Then Linda entered the chat at 1:23 a.m., which meant she'd been up late binge-watching something and got the shock of her entitled life. Linda, Miles, I don't know what's going on with the streaming services, but they're all saying the account is closed. There must be some kind of error. Can you call customer service in the morning? Can I call customer service? That's adorable, Linda. Sure. Let me just call them up and explain that I intentionally canceled everything because your daughter gave me frozen pizza for my birthday and I finally grew a spine. I'm sure they'll fix it right up. The messages continued through the early morning hours, each one more panicked than the last. It was like watching dominoes fall, except the dominoes were pampered adults realizing they actually had to pay for their own stuff. Jordan, 3:47 a.m. Yo, my phone's completely dead. Like no service at all. What's happening? Rebecca, 4:15 a.m. Miles, Tara called me from a neighbor's phone crying about the internet being out. What did you do? What did I do? What did I do? I stopped being a human ATM, Rebecca. I stopped funding a lifestyle for people who couldn't even remember my birthday. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. That's what I did. But my absolute favorite, the crown jewel of this entire message thread, came from Rick, Tara's father, who hadn't spoken to me directly since Christmas 2023 when he cornered me by the eggnog and gave me a 20-minute lecture about providing for family, while I stood there wondering if it was socially acceptable to fake a heart attack to escape a conversation. Rick, 6:42 a.m. A real man doesn't abandon his family. I stared at that message for a solid minute, letting it sink in. A real man doesn't abandon his family. This coming from the guy who went on a fishing trip during his daughter's college graduation because he needed to clear his head. This coming from Mr. I'll just put it on Miles's tab at every family dinner. This coming from someone who genuinely believed that masculinity was measured by how much emotional and financial abuse you could tolerate while maintaining a smile. I typed out about 17 different responses in my head, each one more scathing than the last. I wanted to explain to Rick that a real man knows his worth. That a real man doesn't let people treat him like a convenience store that's open 24 hours for their emergencies. That a real man can recognize when he's being used and actually do something about it instead of just complaining about kids these days and their entitlement while being the most entitled person in the room. But you know what I actually sent? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because the thing about people like Rick is that they don't actually want a conversation. They want validation. They want you to engage so they can feel important and wise and like they've made some kind of point. And the most powerful thing you can do to someone who's trying to manipulate you through guilt is just not play the game. I did, however, screenshot his message and send it to Maya with the caption, "My father-in-law's thoughts on masculinity." Also, he's been on my phone plan for 2 years without contributing a dime. Maya responded within minutes. "I've known you for an hour, and I already know you're more of a man than this dude. Want me to send him a strongly worded email about emotional intelligence?" God, I loved Maya. The messages kept coming as I sat in my car, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange that seemed way too cheerful for the chaos unfolding in my phone. It was like being inside the eye of a hurricane, watching the destruction from a safe distance while maintaining perfect calm. Tara had moved from anger to negotiation, which was a predictable stage. Tara, 7:03 a.m. Miles, I know you're mad, but this is affecting everyone. Can we at least talk about the phone plan? My mom needs her phone for work. Linda didn't work. Linda was retired and spent her days watching home improvement shows and texting unsolicited advice to people who didn't ask for it. But sure, let's pretend her phone was essential for her non-existent career. Then Jordan chimed in with what might be the most Jordan message ever sent. Jordan, 7:21 a.m. Bro, she's saying you hacked the Wi-Fi. I told her that's not how Wi-Fi works, but she's convinced you did something technical and malicious. Also, can you turn my phone back on? I have a date tonight. I had to laugh at that one. I actually laughed out loud in my car, probably looking like a crazy person to anyone passing by. Jordan's girlfriend. Excuse me, his date, needed to call him about their plans, and somehow this was my emergency to solve. The same Jordan who'd been on my phone plan since 2023 and had literally never once offered to contribute. The same Jordan who got fireworks and champagne fountains for his birthday, while I got freezer burn disappointment. No, Jordan. No, you can't have your phone back. Go buy a prepaid phone at a gas station like the rest of US peasants did before family plans were invented. Experience the joy of limited minutes and paying your own way. Build some character. I scrolled further and found a message from Tara's work friend Melissa, who I'd met exactly twice and who apparently felt qualified to weigh in on my personal life. Melissa, 7:44 a.m. Miles, I don't know what's going on between you and Tara, but punishing her like this is really immature. You're acting like a child. Punishing her. That's the word they kept using. Punishing. Like choosing not to pay for someone else's luxuries was some kind of vindictive attack instead of just normal boundaries that functioning adults should have. I wanted to respond to Melissa with a detailed breakdown of exactly how much money I'd spent over the years funding everyone else's comfort while my own needs were treated as optional. I wanted to calculate the exact dollar amount of frozen pizza versus Jordan's birthday party and send her a spreadsheet. I wanted to explain that sometimes punishment is just consequences wearing a different outfit. But again, I didn't respond. Because Melissa didn't actually matter. Her opinion was worth exactly as much as she'd contributed to my phone bill. Nothing. The final message that made me actually put my phone down and take a deep breath came from Linda at 8:02 a.m. Linda, I raised my daughter to be a good wife. This is breaking her heart. I hope you're proud of yourself. And there it was. The ultimate guilt trip. The nuclear option. The think of how this affects my daughter card. As if I hadn't spent 10 years thinking about exactly that while my own feelings were treated like they were optional features nobody ordered. I looked at that message, sitting in my car behind a coffee shop in a town I'd fled to for a fresh start, and I realized something profound. I actually was kind of proud of myself. Proud that I'd finally drawn a line. Proud that I'd stopped accepting crumbs and calling it a meal. Proud that when faced with the choice between maintaining peace and maintaining my dignity, I'd chosen myself for once. I turned my phone face down, grabbed my toiletry bag, and headed into June's coffee shop. She was just unlocking the front door, probably wondering why there was some random guy sitting in his car in her parking lot at 8 in the morning. Morning, she said, not even looking surprised. Rough night. You could say that. Any chance you know where a guy can find a shower and maybe some industrial strength coffee? She grinned. Gym's 2 blocks down. They do day passes. And the industrial coffee? That I can help with right now. You're a lifesaver, June. Nah, she said, flipping the lights on inside the shop. Just someone who recognizes a fellow survivor when she sees one. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of peaceful quiet that makes you think maybe the universe has decided to give you a break. I'd moved into Maya's apartment above the tutoring office 2 days earlier, and I was still in that honeymoon phase with the place where even the creaky floorboards seemed charming instead of annoying. The apartment was exactly as advertised, small, fully furnished by someone who thought throw pillows could solve any decorating problem, and absolutely perfect for a guy who needed to start over with minimal baggage. I'd spent Friday night setting up my laptop, organizing my clothes in the tiny closet, and enjoying the revolutionary concept of living in a space where nobody yelled at me for leaving a coffee mug on the counter. The previous tenant, some grad student named Bethany, according to the passive-aggressive notes she'd left about which light switches controlled which outlets, had left behind approximately 47 decorative pillows, a collection of succulents in various states of death, and a shower curtain with inspirational quotes that I'd immediately replaced with a plain blue one because I didn't need "dream big" staring at me while I shampooed. I woke up around 8, made coffee in the little single-serve maker that looked like it had been purchased during the Obama administration, and was contemplating whether I had the energy to walk to June's shop for a real breakfast when I heard footsteps on the stairs leading up to my apartment. Heavy, determined footsteps. The kind of footsteps that meant someone had driven 3 hours with a mission. Then came the knock. Not a polite "hello, is anyone home" knock. This was a "we need to talk, and I'm not leaving until we do" knock. The kind of knock that makes your stomach drop even when you've been expecting it. I looked through the peephole, which was so old it made everything look like a fisheye lens from a 90s music video, and there she was, Tara, standing in the hallway of my new apartment building, 3 hours away from home, at 8:30 on a Saturday morning. And here's the detail that I will remember for the rest of my life. She was wearing an old hoodie that said, "Live, Laugh, Love," in that cursive font that's required by law to appear on at least one item in every suburban home. The irony level was off the charts. The woman who'd given me frozen pizza for my birthday was standing at my door wearing a hoodie about living and laughing and loving, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing in her face through the door. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the mirror by the door to make sure I didn't look as emotionally destroyed as she probably hoped, and opened it. "Tara," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "How'd you find me?" "Your boss, Maya," she said, not even bothering with a greeting. "I called the tutoring company. Told them it was a family emergency." Of course she did. Classic Tara move. Manipulate the situation, make herself the victim, get what she wants through whatever means necessary. I made a mental note to talk to Maya about establishing some boundaries with my personal information. "It's not an emergency," I said. "Everything's fine. I'm fine. Are you?" She looked past me into the apartment, taking in the throw pillows and dead succulents and the general aesthetic of person starting over in their mid-30s. "This is what you left me for? This place?" "I didn't leave you for a place, Tara. I left you because you treated me like an appliance that you occasionally remembered to maintain." Her eyes got that shiny look they always got when she was about to deploy tears as a tactical weapon. "You're really going to do this? Over a pizza?" And there it was. The reduction of 10 years of slow emotional erosion into one frozen pizza. Like that was the entire problem. Like I'd thrown away a marriage because of a grocery store purchase. "No," I said, and I felt this weird calm settle over me. Over 10 years of being the side character in my own life story. The pizza was just the moment I realized I'd been edited out of the narrative entirely. "What are you even talking about?" She crossed her arms, defensive now. "I've always supported you. I've always been there. You threw Jordan a party with fireworks and a champagne fountain. You gave me a frozen pizza, still in the wrapper. And when I asked you why, you said I wasn't the celebrating type." I leaned against the doorframe, blocking her view into my new life. "But the real issue isn't the pizza, Tara. It's that you genuinely don't see the problem." She wiped at her eyes, smearing mascara that she'd clearly applied in the car. "You've always been so dramatic, Miles. Always making everything into some big emotional production." I actually laughed at that. Couldn't help it. The absurdity was too perfect. "And you've always been so." I paused, searching for the right word, undercooked. What does that even mean? It means you're like that pizza. Half finished. All potential, no follow-through. You talk about love and partnership and building a life together, but when it comes time to actually show up, you're still frozen in the package. Her face went through several expressions, confusion, hurt, anger, before landing on determination. Fine. You want to talk about showing up? Let's talk about how you abandoned your family. How you canceled everything without even talking to me first. How you left my mother without phone service. How you're being completely selfish and childish. Your mother is 63 years old and perfectly capable of paying for her own phone. She's family, Miles. That's what family does. We help each other. Helping is reciprocal, Tara. What you're describing is me being an ATM while everyone else makes withdrawals and never deposits. She shifted tactics, and I could see it happening in real time. The softening of her posture, the slight head tilt, the voice that went from accusatory to pleading. What about Jordan? He needs his phone for work. His girlfriend needs to call him about brunch plans. You're affecting other people's lives. I had to process that for a second. Jordan's girlfriend needs to call him about brunch. Yes, that's the emergency you're presenting to me right now. Brunch coordination. Don't be like that. You know what I mean. I really don't, Tara. Because what I'm hearing is that Jordan, a 34-year-old man with a college degree and a job, can't figure out how to get his own phone plan so his girlfriend can call him about pancakes. And somehow that's my problem to solve. You used to be so much kinder, she said, going for the guilt angle. You used to care about people. I still care about people. I just don't care about being used anymore. There's a difference. We stood there in the doorway. This woman I'd been married to for 10 years, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. Or maybe I was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. Either way, whatever connection we'd had, or thought we'd had, was gone. It had probably been gone for years, and we'd both just been too comfortable or too scared to acknowledge it. Is this really what you want? She asked, her voice small now. To throw away everything we built? What did we build, Tara? Honestly, what did we build? Because from where I'm standing, I built a lot of things. I built a stable income that funded everyone else's lifestyle. I built patience for your family's endless demands. I built a tolerance for being treated like I didn't matter. But what did we build together? She didn't have an answer for that. Just stood there in her live, laugh, love, hoodie, looking lost and confused like someone had suddenly changed the rules of a game she thought she was winning. I'm not trying to be cruel, I said, and I meant it. But I'm also not going to set myself on fire to keep everyone else warm anymore. You want the phone plan back on? Pay for it yourself. You want streaming services? Subscribe to them. You want a husband who shows up for you? Try showing up for him first. So that's it. You're just done. Yeah, Tara. I'm done being an afterthought. I'm done being convenient. I'm done being the guy who gets frozen pizza while everyone else gets fireworks. I could see her gearing up for another argument, another guilt trip, another manipulation tactic from the playbook she'd been using for years. But I didn't have the energy for it anymore. More importantly, I didn't have the obligation. I need to get ready for work, I said, which wasn't true. It was Saturday, and I didn't start at the tutoring center until Monday. But she didn't need to know that. Drive safe going back. And then I did something that felt both incredibly simple and incredibly powerful. I closed the door. Not a slam. Not an angry bang that would give her ammunition for the story she'd tell about how cruel and dramatic I was being. Just a slow, deliberate, polite closing of the door. I heard her stand there for a minute, probably debating whether to knock again. Then footsteps, retreating down the stairs. The sound of the building's front door opening and closing. A car engine starting in the parking lot below. I walked to the window and watched her drive away in the SUV that I'd helped pay off 2 years earlier. She sat in the driver's seat for a solid 5 minutes before pulling out, probably texting people about what a terrible person I was, probably calling Linda to report on the failed mission. I felt nothing. No regret, no sadness, no triumph. Just a quiet sense of relief that this chapter was finally, definitively closed. Revenge, but make it classy. I grabbed my keys and headed down to June's coffee shop. I needed a real breakfast, and maybe some conversation with someone who actually seemed to enjoy my company. Living in a small town after spending a decade in the suburbs is like switching from a loud rock concert to a library. The silence is so profound you start hearing things you forgot existed. Like birds, and your own thoughts. And the sound of your neighbor Mrs. Patterson walking her corgi past your window every morning at exactly 7:15 while singing what I can only assume are show tunes from the 1960s. A week had passed since Tara showed up at my door in her ironic hoodie, and I'd settled into a routine that felt suspiciously like peace. Wake up. Coffee at June's. Work at the tutoring center helping high school kids understand SAT prep and why Shakespeare still mattered. More coffee at June's. Home to my apartment full of throw pillows. Sleep. Repeat. It was simple and boring and absolutely perfect. Maya had been incredible about the whole situation. She didn't pry, didn't ask invasive questions, just gave me space to exist, and occasionally dropped off containers of homemade soup, because apparently that's what normal, emotionally healthy people do for each other. Who knew? I was sitting in my apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, grading practice essays from a student who thought Romeo and Juliet was about two kids who made bad choices because of poor parental supervision, when my phone rang. Maya. That was weird. She usually just texted unless it was something important. Hey, I answered. What's up? So, Maya said, and I could hear the barely contained laughter in her voice. I just got the most interesting phone call. Define interesting. Your mother-in-law called the tutoring center trying to track you down. I sat up straight, nearly knocking over my coffee. Linda called you? How did she even get this number? Apparently, she's been calling every tutoring company within a 100-mile radius. Very determined woman. She told my receptionist it was a family emergency and that she needed to speak with you immediately regarding urgent financial matters. Oh my God, it gets better, Maya said. When Jessica told her you weren't available, Linda asked for your home address because, as your employer, I have a legal obligation to provide that information to family members in crisis. I had to laugh. I actually had to laugh because the audacity was impressive. What did you tell her? I told her you joined witness protection and I wasn't legally allowed to disclose your location. You didn't. I absolutely did. She sputtered for about 30 seconds and then hung up. Jessica said it was the highlight of her week. Maya paused. Should I be worried? Is this woman going to show up here with a SWAT team? No, she's just mad that I stopped funding her phone plan and now she actually has to use her retirement money on things like cell service. The horror. The absolute tragedy, Maya said. Anyway, I wanted to give you a heads up in case she escalates to skywriting or hiring a private investigator. After we hung up, I sat there marveling at the commitment it must have taken for Linda to call multiple tutoring companies trying to hunt me down. That was dedication. Misguided, boundary-crossing dedication, but dedication nonetheless. Out of morbid curiosity, and because apparently I enjoy emotional self-harm, I grabbed my laptop and logged into the family's shared Google Drive. We'd set it up years ago for sharing documents and photos, and I'd honestly forgotten I still had access. Nobody had bothered to remove me, probably because Tara didn't know how and was too proud to ask. The main folder had the usual suspects: tax documents, home repairs, vacation photos from 2019. But there were some new additions that made me actually snort coffee through my nose. First folder, emergency bills. I clicked it open. Inside were screenshots of every disconnection notice, every email from Netflix and Hulu about canceled subscriptions, every text from phone carriers about suspended service. They documented the entire crisis like they were building a legal case. There were even photos of Linda's phone screen showing no service, like that was evidence of my war crimes. Second folder, apology drafts. Oh, this was going to be good. Inside were at least a dozen Word documents with various attempts at crafting the perfect apology to lure me back into funding their lifestyle. I opened the first one, titled Apology, Version 1, Emotional Angle. Dear Miles, we realize now that we may have taken your generosity for granted. May have. The uncertainty was killing me. I opened another one. Apology, Version 3, Financial Compromise. Dear Miles, what if we agreed to pay you back for half of the streaming services over the next 18 months? Half. Over 18 months. So essentially they wanted to reimburse me about $6 per month for services they'd been using for years. The math wasn't mathing, as the kids would say. The best one, though, was titled Apology, Mom's Version, Guilt Trip. Dear Miles, Linda wanted me to tell you that she's been unable to reach her cardiologist because her phone isn't working, and this could be a matter of life and death. Linda didn't have a cardiologist. Linda had the cholesterol levels of a marathon runner and bragged about it constantly. The woman ate kale for fun. But sure, let's pretend this was a medical emergency. Then I saw it. The folder that made this entire snooping expedition worthwhile. Miles being difficult. I clicked it with the enthusiasm of someone about to watch a train wreck in slow motion, and what I found was somehow worse and better than I could have imagined. It was full of memes. Memes. They'd made memes about me. There was one of that guy from The Office looking annoyed with the caption, "When your husband cancels Netflix because you gave him frozen pizza." Another was the distracted boyfriend meme. Boyfriend looking at being petty, girlfriend labeled having a mature conversation, with the caption, "Miles choosing violence." They'd made a whole collection. Screenshots of my thumbs up emoji with dramatic captions. A compilation of text where I just didn't respond, labeled the silent treatment, a masterclass. Even a poorly edited image of me as a Disney villain with the caption, "Miles destroys family Wi-Fi, 2024, colorized." The commitment to documenting their victimhood was honestly impressive. They'd put more effort into these memes than they had into remembering my birthday. I was still scrolling through this digital monument to their wounded feelings when my phone rang. Jordan. I stared at his name on the screen, debating whether to answer. We hadn't spoken since the great subscription cancellation of 2024, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Curiosity won. I answered. "Miles, man, we need to talk." Jordan's voice sounded weird. Strained. Like he was hiding in a closet or something. "What's up, dude?" "Tara's telling everyone you've lost it. Like, completely lost your mind. She's saying you had some kind of breakdown and fled to the wilderness." "I'm in a college town, Jordan. There's a Starbucks on the corner. This is hardly the wilderness." "Yeah, I figured. But she's going hard with the narrative. Posted on Facebook about how she's worried about your mental health and asking for prayers." She posted on Facebook. I said it flatly, not even as a question. Of course she did. Public sympathy was Tara's favorite currency. It gets worse. "Linda's telling people you stole money from them and disappeared." "Stole money? I stopped paying for their stuff." "That's not theft. That's called having boundaries." There was a pause, and then Jordan said something that absolutely floored me. "Bro, between you and me, you're kind of my hero right now." "What?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm serious. Everyone's been texting me asking if you're okay, and I've been telling them, yeah, you're fine. You just finally figured out what the rest of us are too scared to do. Which is, put yourself first, man. Stand up for yourself. Stop being everyone's ATM and emotional punching bag." He laughed, but it sounded bitter. "Sarah, my girlfriend, she asked me why I don't have my own phone plan, and I didn't have a good answer. You know what I realized? I'm 34 years old, and I've been on your family plan for 2 years because it was easier than being a grown-up." I didn't know what to say. Jordan, Party Jordan, Fireworks Jordan, the guy who'd never met a responsibility he couldn't avoid, was having an epiphany. "I got my own plan yesterday," he continued. "Paid for 3 months up front. And man, it felt good. Like I was finally acting my age." Jordan, No, let me finish. "What Tara did to you was messed up. The pizza thing, the way she treated you like you didn't matter, all of it. And everyone just went along with it because you never complained. You just kept paying and showing up and being the reliable guy." He paused. "But you don't have to be that guy anymore. You can just be Miles." "Tell her I found it." I said. "Found what?" "My mind. Tell her I found it." It was under a pile of unpaid bills and resentment. Silence on the other end. Then Jordan laughed, really laughed, the kind of genuine sound I hadn't heard from him in years. "You're kind of my hero, bro," he whispered again, like he was afraid someone would hear him. I didn't expect that twist. There's something deeply weird about receiving handwritten letters in 2024. It's like getting a telegram or finding a payphone that actually works. It exists in this space between nostalgic and vaguely threatening. So when I came home from work on a Thursday afternoon and found a cream-colored envelope propped against my apartment door, my first thought was either someone had died or I was being served with divorce papers disguised as a Pinterest project. The envelope had my name written in Tara's handwriting, which I recognized immediately because I'd seen it on countless grocery lists and passive-aggressive notes about leaving dishes in the sink. Her handwriting had this specific quality that I can only describe as regret mixed with bad eyeliner, loopy and dramatic with inconsistent pressure, like she'd written it while crying or at least trying to look like she was crying. I picked it up, held it for a second, and seriously considered just throwing it away without reading it. That would have been the healthy boundary move, right? Just toss it in the trash and move on with my life. But curiosity is a hell of a drug, and I'm apparently still addicted to bad decisions when it comes to my ex-wife. I made myself a cup of tea. Actual tea, not coffee, because this felt like a tea-drinking moment, and sat down on my couch surrounded by Bethany's army of throw pillows. The envelope wasn't sealed properly. She'd used one of those little sticker things that said, "With love," in gold script, which felt like either intentional irony or complete obliviousness. With Tara, it was genuinely 50-50. I opened it carefully, half expecting glitter to explode everywhere, because that seemed like something she'd do. Inside was 3 pages of cream stationery. The fancy kind you buy at places like HomeGoods when you're trying to convince yourself you're the type of person who writes letters. The paper even had a faint floral pattern in the corners. Very classy. Very. I'm having a moment of growth and reflection. Dear Miles, it started, and I immediately noticed she'd written dear, and then crossed it out and written it again, darker. A false start. Great beginning. I've been doing a lot of thinking since you left, and I wanted to reach out to tell you how I'm feeling. I know things ended badly between us, and I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I stopped reading and had to take a breath. Didn't mean to make you feel that way. That phrase right there, that beautiful, classic non-apology that takes zero responsibility while sounding like it's taking all the responsibility. She didn't mean to. It just happened. Accidentally. Like giving your husband frozen pizza for his birthday was some kind of cosmic accident that she had no control over. Translation, she absolutely meant to. Or at the very least, she didn't care enough to not do it, which is functionally the same thing. I kept reading, morbid fascination propelling me forward. Looking back, I realized that maybe I took you for granted sometimes. You were always so reliable, so steady, and I think I started to see that as just who you were instead of recognizing all the effort you were putting in. You made everything look so easy that I forgot it was work. Okay, that was almost self-aware. Almost. Except it was still framed as "I forgot," instead of "I chose not to acknowledge." Like my contributions to our life together were so seamless and invisible that she just couldn't help but overlook them. Poor Tara, victim of my competence. The letter continued for another page and a half, and it was fascinating in the way watching a car crash in slow motion is fascinating. She talked about how hard the last few weeks had been for her, noticed the focus on her, and how she'd been really struggling without me there to handle things. She mentioned that her mom had been so stressed about the phone situation and that Jordan had been really inconvenienced by having to get his own plan. Not once did she mention my birthday. Not once did she acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, the frozen pizza incident was emblematic of a larger pattern of behavior. Nope, this was all about how my absence was affecting everyone else. But then, on page 3, she wrote something that made me actually laugh out loud in my apartment, probably concerning Mrs. Patterson next door who was already suspicious of me. I think part of the problem was that you were always so independent. You never really needed me for anything, and that made it hard to know how to show up for you. You've always been this way. Too self-sufficient, too okay with being alone. Maybe if you'd asked for more, I would have known how to give it. Too independent, too self-sufficient, too okay with being alone. Translation, you were inconveniently self-aware and didn't need me to function, which made it harder for me to feel important without actually having to do anything important. She'd managed to turn my basic emotional maturity into a character flaw. That took skill, honestly. Olympic-level mental gymnastics. She'd stuck the landing on that rationalization. The letter ended with, "I hope you're doing okay wherever you are. I miss you, even though I know things can't go back to how they were. Maybe someday we can be friends. Tara, maybe someday we can be friends." The universal closing line of people who want to feel better about themselves without actually changing anything. Sure, Tara, maybe someday when I've undergone a full lobotomy and forgotten what boundaries are, we can grab coffee and pretend you didn't spend a decade treating me like a houseplant that occasionally needed watering. I folded the letter carefully, put it back in its envelope, and walked over to my dresser. I opened the bottom drawer, the one where I'd been throwing random stuff I didn't know what to do with, and tucked the letter inside. Not to keep it forever, not to frame it as some kind of trophy. Just to remind myself why peace tastes better than pizza. Why a quiet apartment full of someone else's throw pillows was better than a house full of people who didn't see me. Physical evidence that I'd made the right choice. My phone buzzed. Text from June. Made too many muffins. Again. Come save me from myself. I smiled. Over the past 2 weeks, June had developed this habit of accidentally making extra muffins, and texting me to come get them. Yesterday, it was blueberry. Tuesday was chocolate chip. Today, according to her follow-up text, was lemon poppy seed. I didn't correct her about the accidents. I didn't point out that she was clearly doing this on purpose. Some things you just let happen because they're nice and you deserve nice things. I grabbed my jacket and headed down to the coffee shop. The evening air was crisp, and Main Street was doing that small-town thing where everyone seemed to know each other. Mrs. Patterson was outside with her corgi, chatting with the guy who owned the hardware store. A couple of college kids were sitting on a bench sharing earbuds and laughing about something on someone's phone. Normal life. Simple life. June's shop was nearly empty when I walked in. Just one guy in the corner working on a laptop and a teenage girl studying with highlighters spread across her table like she was preparing for war. Your timing is impeccable, June said, pulling a basket of muffins from the back. These are still warm. What a coincidence, I said, playing along. Me, showing up right when you have extra muffins. What are the odds? Astronomical, she said, grinning. Must be fate. Must be. She poured me a coffee without asking. She'd learned my order by day 3, which was either attentive or slightly concerning, and slid a plate with a muffin across the counter. So, she said, leaning on the counter in that way that suggested she was settling in for conversation. You looked pretty serious when you walked in. Everything okay? Got a letter from my ex-wife, I said. 3 pages of almost apologies and creative blame shifting. The classic, I'm sorry you feel that way genre of correspondence. Exactly that. She told me I was too independent, and that's why she didn't know how to show up for me. June raised her eyebrows. Wow. That's a take. Right? Like my ability to function as an adult was somehow a personal attack on her capacity to care. Did you write back? Nope. Filed it away in my drawer of reasons I made good decisions and came here for muffins instead. Smart man, June said. She grabbed a muffin for herself and took a bite. You know what I did when my ex tried to give me the maybe we can be friends speech? What? I told him sure. We can be friends the same way I'm friends with my dentist. I'll see him twice a year. It'll be mildly uncomfortable, and I'll leave feeling like I need to take better care of myself. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my muffin. That's perfect. He didn't think so. But then again, he also thought leaving me for his CrossFit instructor was a journey of self-discovery. So his judgment was questionable. We sat there for a while, eating muffins and trading stories about terrible exes and bad decisions and the weird freedom that comes from starting over. The teenage girl eventually packed up her highlighters and left. The laptop guy ordered another coffee and settled in for what looked like a long night. You seem different than when you first came in here, June said eventually. Lighter, maybe? I feel lighter, I admitted. Like I've been carrying a backpack full of rocks and finally figured out I could just put it down. Good, she said. You deserve to travel light. I finished my muffin, drained my coffee, and stood to leave. Thanks for the accident muffins. Anytime, she said. Same time tomorrow? I'm thinking banana nut. What a coincidence. That's my favorite. Fate, she said, smiling. Must be. Small wins. 6 months later, my 35th birthday rolled around, and I woke up to the smell of something actually baking. June had borrowed my apartment key. We'd been dating for 3 months, taking it slow, and made me a real cake. No plastic wrap. No frozen crust. Just honest-to-God vanilla cake with chocolate frosting. My coworkers at the tutoring center sang off-key during lunch break, and Maya gave me a coffee mug that said, "World's okayest teacher." Perfect. That evening, a small package arrived with no return address. Inside, a framed photo of Tara and me from happier days, back when we still smiled like we meant it. The note said, "I didn't know what you were carrying. I do now. I'm sorry." I didn't reply, didn't throw it away either. Just set it in that drawer with her letter, artifacts from a life I'd outgrown. Later, June and I sat on my couch eating leftover cake, and I raised my glass. Happy birthday, Miles. You finally celebrated you. Somewhere between laughter and buttercream frosting, I realized I wasn't the husband who got frozen pizza anymore. I was the man who learned to leave the oven on for himself. I woke up that morning to sunlight spilling through the curtains, the kind of soft glow that makes you feel like the day might actually be good. It was my birthday, another trip around the sun, another year of grinding through life. I stretched in bed, expecting the usual quiet routine. Coffee, maybe a mumbled happy birthday from Brielle if she remembered. But then I heard her voice, bright and loud, drifting in from the kitchen. "Good morning, birthday boy," she called, and I sat up, blinking, caught off guard. Brielle was standing there with a grin, her dark hair tied back, wearing that red blouse I always liked. Beside her was Cameron, her sister, smirking like she knew something I didn't. "Get up, lazy," Cameron said, tossing a dish towel onto the counter. "We've got plans." Plans? That word hit me like a jolt. For years, my birthday had been a non-event. No cards, no cake, just me pretending it didn't sting when Brielle forgot and Cameron didn't care. So this cheerfulness, this energy, was new. I rubbed my eyes and swung my legs out of bed, feeling a flicker of something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice still rough from sleep. Brielle walked over, her smile widening, and pressed a quick kiss to my cheek. "It's a surprise," she said. "A birthday trip. We're taking you somewhere special." My chest warmed at that. A trip? For me? I couldn't remember the last time we'd gone anywhere together, let alone for my sake. Cameron nodded, leaning against the counter. "Yeah, so hurry up. Bags are packed, car's ready." I stumbled to my feet, a grin tugging at my lips. "You're serious?" I said, looking between them. Brielle laughed, a sound I used to chase after, and Cameron rolled her eyes, but it felt playful, not mean. "Dead serious," Brielle replied. "Go get dressed. We're leaving soon." I didn't need to be told twice. I threw on jeans and a shirt, my mind racing. Maybe a cabin up north? A weekend by the lake? It didn't matter. I was just happy they'd thought of me for once. I grabbed my wallet, my phone, and headed for the front door where I always kept my keys. The car was outside, engine humming, trunk popped open with bags stacked inside. I could see Brielle's bright yellow suitcase, Cameron's black duffel. This was real. I reached for my keys on the hook, already picturing the open road, when Brielle's hand stopped me. "Hold on," she said, and shoved something into my palm, a folded piece of paper. I looked at her, confused, then unfolded it. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a map or a hotel booking. It was a list. Clean the gutters. Mow the lawn. Fix the garage light. Take out the trash. My eyes scanned it, each line sinking in like a punch. I looked up at Brielle, then Cameron, waiting for the punchline, but their faces had shifted. Brielle's smile was gone, replaced by a blank stare. Cameron crossed her arms, that smirk back in full force. "Where do you think you're going?" she said, her voice sharp now, cutting through the air. "This trip is for us, not for you. You're staying here. Be useful." My throat tightened. I stood there, the paper crumpling in my fist, staring at them as they grabbed their bags and headed for the door. Brielle didn't even look back. "Have a good birthday," she called over her shoulder, like it was a joke. The door slammed. The car peeled out. And I was alone, the list still in my hand, the weight of it heavier than anything I'd ever held. I don't know how long I stood there, rooted to the spot, replaying it all in my head. The cheer, the kiss, the promise of a trip, it had all been a setup, a cruel little game to make me feel small. I'd been married to Brielle for 8 years, lived with Cameron in the house for 5, and somehow I'd let myself believe today would be different. I walked to the kitchen, dropped the list on the counter, and stared at it. The words blurred as my pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to yell, to throw something, but instead I just laughed, a low, bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd just take it, like always. But as I stood there, the silence of the empty house pressing in, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just a bad day. This was a line crossed. And I wasn't going to let it slide, not this time. I watched the car disappear down the street, its taillights flickering red before vanishing around the corner. The house felt too big, too quiet, like it was mocking me right along with them. I stood there by the window, the crumpled chore list still in my hand, and let the truth settle in. Brielle and Cameron had played me, and I'd fallen for it like a fool. My birthday, the one day I dared to hope might mean something, had turned into another slap in the face. I tossed the list onto the coffee table and sank into the couch, staring at the ceiling. How had it come to this? How had I let them turn me into this guy, this shadow of myself who just took it, day after day, year after year? It wasn't always like this. When I met Brielle, she was different, or at least, I thought she was. Back then, she had this spark, this way of looking at me that made me feel like I mattered. We'd laugh over dumb stuff, like spilling coffee on a first date or getting lost on a road trip with no GPS. I'd fix her car when it broke down, and she'd call me her hero, half joking but half serious. We got married fast, too fast, maybe, but I loved her, and I thought she loved me back. Then her parents died in that car accident 6 years ago, and everything changed. Cameron moved in a few months later, saying she needed family, needed support. I didn't argue. I figured it was temporary. But temporary turned into permanent, and the two of them became this unbreakable team, a team I wasn't on. At first, it was little things. Brielle started asking me to handle the bills, the yard, the leaky sink, stuff I didn't mind doing because I wanted to help. But then Cameron got in on it, tossing out orders like I worked for her. Fix the Wi-Fi, she'd say, not even looking up from her phone. The porch lights out again, Brielle would add, like I hadn't just spent all day at my own job. I'd nod, grab my tools, and get it done, thinking it was just easier to keep the peace. But the more I did, the less they saw me as a husband, a person. I became the guy who fixed things, the guy who stayed quiet, the guy who didn't matter. They'd sit there at the kitchen table, planning their weekends, their shopping trips, their lives, while I scrubbed dishes or mowed the lawn. If I ever pushed back, asked for a night out, a say in anything, they'd team up, rolling their eyes, calling me dramatic. Don't be so sensitive, Cameron would say. You're lucky we put up with you. Brielle would chime in, laughing like it was a joke. Except it wasn't. I'd let it build up, all those years of biting my tongue. I told myself it was fine, that I could handle it, that marriage was about compromise. But compromise isn't one-sided. It isn't being left with a chore list while they drive off laughing, treating my birthday like a punchline. I leaned forward on the couch, resting my elbows on my knees, and ran my hands through my hair. The memory of Cameron's smirk, sharp, smug, like she enjoyed watching me squirm, burned in my mind. And Brielle, my wife, the woman I'd promised my life to, hadn't even flinched as she handed me that list. She'd planned it with her, probably laughed about it the night before while I slept, oblivious. The betrayal wasn't just in the act. It was in how easy it came to them, how natural it felt for them to grind me down. I stood up, pacing the living room, my socks scuffing against the hardwood. The walls were covered with photos. Us at our wedding, a trip to the coast, holidays with her family. None of them felt real anymore. They were props in a play I didn't know I was starring in, a story where I was the fool who kept coming back for more. I stopped by the fireplace, staring at a picture of the three of us from last Christmas. Brielle and Cameron were grinning, arms around each other, while I stood off to the side, holding a tray of cookies I'd baked. Even then, I was the extra, the background guy. My chest tightened, a hot, angry knot forming there. I'd been silent too long, swallowing it all to avoid the fight, to keep the house from turning into a war zone. But this birthday stunt, it was too much. It was the straw that didn't just break the camel's back. It set the whole damn thing on fire. I grabbed the photo off the mantel and tossed it into the trash can by the couch. The glass frame clinked against the metal, and it felt good, better than it should have. I wasn't just mad at them anymore. I was mad at me, at how I'd let this become my life. As the car's engine faded from my memory, something else took its place. A spark, small but growing, telling me I didn't have to take this anymore. They thought they'd left me behind, stuck here with their list, their rules. But they were wrong. This wasn't the end of my birthday. It was the start of something else, something they wouldn't see coming. I stood there in the trashed-out silence of the living room, the photo frame still rattling in the garbage can, and felt that spark in my chest flare up into something hotter, something alive. Brielle and Cameron were gone, probably laughing in the car by now, thinking they'd pulled off their little stunt and left me in the dust. The chore list sat on the coffee table like a taunt, daring me to pick it up and start scrubbing their messes like a good little servant. But I wasn't going to. Not today. Not ever again. I grabbed the list, ripped it in half, and let the pieces flutter to the floor. Then I headed to the kitchen, flipped on the coffee maker, and started thinking. If they wanted to play games, I'd play one of my own, a better one. The coffee brewed, filling the air with that sharp, bitter smell I've always liked. I poured a mug, black, no sugar, and leaned against the counter, letting the steam curl up around my face. My mind was racing, picking apart the morning, their smug faces, the way they dangled that fake trip in front of me like a carrot before yanking it away. They thought I'd just sit here, sulk, maybe mow the lawn to burn off the sting. But sulking wasn't what I wanted. I wanted them to feel what I felt, caught off guard, small, exposed. I took a sip of the coffee, burning my tongue a little, and that's when it hit me. A party. My birthday party. Not some quiet night alone, but a real one, loud and full, with people who'd see them for what they were. I set the mug down, a grin tugging at my lips. Yeah, that'd do it. I didn't waste time. I walked straight to Brielle's home office, the little room off the hallway she always kept locked when she wasn't around. Except she hadn't locked it today. She'd been too busy plotting her getaway. The door creaked open, and there it was, her laptop, sitting on the desk, screen dark. I flipped it open, and to my surprise, no password popped up. She must have logged out in a hurry. I sat down, the chair squeaking under me, and started clicking. Her email was still open. Work stuff, client stuff, all these names and addresses she guarded like gold. I scrolled through, copying every contact I could find. Her boss, her coworkers, some big-shot clients she bragged about. Then I moved to her calendar, dinners, meetings, social events. More names, more emails. I didn't feel guilty. Not one bit. This was mine now. Next stop was Cameron's room. She'd taken over the guest bedroom years ago, turned it into her own little kingdom with clothes piled everywhere and a desk shoved in the corner. Her laptop was there too, lit up, no password either. Sloppy, both of them. I sat on her bed, didn't care if I wrinkled her precious throw blanket, and dug in. Her email was messier than Brielle's, full of junk, but I found what I needed. Her boyfriend's address, her work contacts, even some friends she'd dragged into her orbit. I copied it all, my fingers flying over the keys, adrenaline pumping through me. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about everyone they cared about, everyone they'd lied to, everyone who'd see the truth. Back in my own office, a cramped corner of the basement I'd claimed for myself, I fired up my computer. My email wasn't as fancy as theirs, just a basic account with contacts from my job and a few buddies I still kept in touch with. I merged everything. Brielle's list, Cameron's list, mine. It was a monster, hundreds of names, maybe more. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, and started typing. You're invited to my surprise birthday party. I wrote, keeping it bright, cheerful, like something they'd send. Hosted by my loving wife, Brielle, and her amazing sister, Cameron. Tonight at 7:30 p.m., our house. Don't miss it. Let's celebrate kindness and family. I added a few emojis, a cake, a balloon, just to sell it. Then I picked out the big guns. Cameron's boyfriend, Jake, who'd been on thin ice with her lately, and Brielle's mentor, Clark Ellison, this hotshot executive she worshipped. If they showed up, this would hit even harder. I read it over once, twice, making sure it sounded perfect, sweet enough to lure them in, vague enough to keep them guessing. My heart was thumping loud in my chest, but it wasn't fear. It was excitement. I pictured their faces, Brielle's fake smile cracking, Cameron's smirk falling apart, when they realized what I'd done. They'd left me here to rot, but I wasn't rotting. I was building something, a trap, a stage, a chance to turn their game back on them. I hit send, watching the little loading bar zip across the screen, and then it was done. Hundreds of invites, out in the world, no taking them back. I leaned back, hands behind my head, and let out a long breath. The coffee was cold now, but I didn't care. I just lit a match, and tonight, I'd watch it burn. The house was buzzing by late afternoon, alive in a way it hadn't been in years. I stood in the kitchen, wiping my hands on a towel, watching Miles haul in a folding table while Trina strung fairy lights across the living room. It was my birthday, sure, but this wasn't about cake or candles anymore. It was about flipping the script. After sending those invites, I'd called Miles, my old college buddy who never said no to a wild idea, and Trina, our neighbor who'd seen enough of Brielle and Cameron's nonsense to jump at the chance to help. You're really doing this? Miles had asked, laughing through the phone. Hell yeah, I am, I'd said. Get over here. And they did. No questions, no hesitation. We turned the place into a party zone fast. Miles ran to the store and came back with trays of food, chicken wings, sliders, those little meatballs on sticks people love. Trina raided her garage for extra chairs and dragged over a Bluetooth speaker, blasting some upbeat playlist I didn't recognize, but liked anyway. I swept the floors, tossed out the ripped chore list pieces, and set up a table by the door with a guest book, something Brielle would have done to look classy. I even found some balloons in the basement, leftover from who knows what, and blew them up until my cheeks hurt. By 7 p.m., the house looked good, better than good. It looked like a celebration, the kind you'd see on Instagram with a caption about best night ever. Except this night wasn't for them. It was for me. Guests started trickling in around 7:30, right on time. First was a couple of guys from my work, slapping me on the back, saying, "Happy birthday, man." Then some of Brielle's clients, all dressed up like they were expecting a fancy dinner, shaking my hand and asking, "Where's the hostess?" I just smiled, smooth as I could, and said, "Brielle's running a bit late. She'll be here soon." They nodded, grabbed drinks from the cooler Miles had stocked, and mingled like nothing was off. More people showed up. Cameron's boyfriend, Jake, looking confused but curious, and then Clark Ellison, Brielle's mentor, striding in with this air of importance that made the room shift. "Good to see you," he said, clapping my shoulder. "Brielle's outdone herself, huh?" I grinned. "You have no idea." I played the part, moving through the crowd, shaking hands, laughing at jokes. I grabbed my phone and snapped group photos. Me with Miles and Trina, me with Jake, me with Clark and some of Brielle's co-workers. Everyone was smiling, clinking glasses, eating the food like it was a real party. And it was, in a way. I stood by the fireplace at one point, holding a beer, and raised it high. "To kindness and honesty," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Thanks to my wife and sister-in-law for making this happen." The room cheered, glasses went up, and I took a long sip, letting the words hang there. No one knew yet. No one suspected. It felt good, holding that secret, watching them all play along. Then, at 8:15, I decided it was time. The crowd was thick, maybe 50 people packed into the living room and spilling onto the back porch. I climbed onto a chair, tapped my beer bottle with a spoon to get their attention, and waited until the chatter died down. "Hey, everyone," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was hammering. "I've got something to say." They all turned, faces curious, some smiling, some sipping their drinks. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a fresh copy of the chore list. I'd printed it off Brielle's laptop earlier, just for this. "So, this was my birthday surprise today," I started, holding it up. "Woke up thinking we were going on a trip. Me, Brielle, Cameron. A family thing, you know." A few people nodded, still smiling. I kept going. But nah, they handed me this instead. Told me the trip was for them, not me. Told me to stay home and be useful. I started reading it aloud. "Clean the gutters. Mow the lawn. Fix the garage light." My voice didn't shake, didn't crack. I kept it calm, clear, letting each word land. The room went quiet, dead quiet, like someone had hit mute. Faces changed, smiles faded, eyes widened. I looked out at them, saw Jake's jaw tighten, saw Clark's brow furrow. "So yeah," I said, folding the list back up, "that's why they're not here. They're off on their trip, and I figured, why not throw a party anyway? You're all here because they mean something to you. Or they did. Now you know what they mean to me." I stepped down, set the list on the table, and took another sip of my beer. No one clapped. No one cheered. They just stared, some whispering, some shaking their heads. Jake was the first to move. He grabbed his jacket, muttered something I didn't catch, and bolted for the door. Clark stayed, but his face was stone, disappointment, maybe anger, I couldn't tell. Brielle's co-workers huddled up, whispering fast, probably texting her already. The air was heavy, thick with shock, and I let it sit there. I didn't need to say more. The truth was out, raw and real, and it was spreading faster than I'd hoped. Miles came over, slapped my shoulder, and said, "You're a legend, man." Trina just grinned, handing me another beer. I took it, feeling lighter than I had in years. My only regret? Waiting this long to stop playing their game and start winning my own. I stood there in the aftermath of the party, the living room still humming with the ghosts of shocked whispers and clinking glasses. The last guests had trickled out around 9:30, some patting my back, others avoiding my eyes like they'd seen something they couldn't unsee. Miles and Trina were cleaning up, stacking plates, tossing empty bottles, while I leaned against the wall, my beer long gone warm in my hand. The house felt different now, like it was mine again, even if just for a night. I'd done it. I'd turned their cruel little trick into a bomb that blew up in their faces. And the best part? They didn't even know yet. But they would. Oh, they? I pulled out my phone, scrolled through the photos I'd taken, me smiling with Clark, Jake raising a glass before he'd stormed out, the crowd laughing before I dropped the truth. I picked the best one. Me front and center, arms out, the room packed behind me with balloons and lights making it look like a real celebration. I opened a text to Brielle and Cameron, attached the picture, and started typing. Thanks for the party idea, I wrote, keeping it short, sharp. You're going to love the guest list. I hit send before I could second guess it, then turned the phone face down on the table. I didn't need to wait for their reply. I could already imagine their faces, Brielle's eyes narrowing, Cameron's mouth dropping open when they saw it. They'd think it was a joke at first. Then they'd panic. And I'd be here, miles away from their mess, letting it sink in. Miles walked over, wiping his hands on his jeans. You good, man? He asked, his grin half-cocked like he already knew the answer. Better than good, I said, and I meant it. Need a place to crash? He added, nodding toward the door. I glanced around, the empty cups, the deflated balloons, and nodded back. Yeah, let's get out of here. I didn't want to be in this house when they came back, whenever that was. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, and followed him out, Trina locking the door behind us with the spare key she'd had for years. The night air was cool, crisp, hitting my face like a wake-up call as we piled into Miles' truck and headed to his place a few streets over. My phone started buzzing before we even hit the first stoplight. Text at first, Brielle's name flashing, then Cameron's. I didn't look. Then the calls started, one after another, the screen lighting up on the seat beside me. Miles glanced over, chuckling. They're freaking out already, huh? He said. Let him, I replied, and turned the phone off completely. Silence. Beautiful, perfect silence. We got to his place, a small apartment with a couch that'd be my bed for the night, and I crashed hard, the adrenaline finally fading into a deep, dreamless sleep. I didn't need to hear their voices, their excuses. Not yet. They could stew in it, wonder who'd been there, what I'd said, how bad it was. I'd deal with them later. I woke up to sunlight streaming through Miles' blinds, the smell of coffee pulling me upright. My phone was still off, but I didn't turn it on right away. I sat there on the couch, sipping the mug Miles handed me, letting the quiet stretch out. You're famous, you know, he said, tossing his phone onto the cushion beside me. I frowned, picked it up, and saw it, a post on X from one of the guests, some guy I barely knew from Brielle's office. The photo was the same one I'd sent, me in front of the crowd, but the caption hit like a freight train. This man just pulled the most savage birthday revenge ever. I scrolled down. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, legend. They deserved it. Who does that to their husband? My jaw tightened, not from anger, but from something else, pride, maybe, or just relief. It was out there now, spreading like wildfire, and I hadn't even planned that part. I turned my phone back on, bracing myself. The notifications flooded in, missed calls, voicemails, text piling up like a storm. Brielle, what the hell did you do? Cameron, you're a jerk? You know that? Then more from Brielle, call me back. Now. I didn't. I scrolled past them, found a few from people I actually cared about. Trina saying, you nailed it, and a guy from work, heard what happened. Respect. But the real kicker was the X post blowing up. By noon, it had thousands of likes, retweets, people I didn't know chiming in with their own stories, calling me some kind of hero. I wasn't trying to be. I just wanted them to feel what I'd felt, to lose that perfect little image they clung to. And now they were. Miles cooked us eggs, and we sat there eating, him scrolling through the comments, laughing at the wilder ones. They're gonna lose it when they see this, he said, and I nodded, chewing slow. I didn't need to see their faces to know it was bad. Jake dumping Cameron, Clark probably icing Brielle out. Those were just the start. Their world was cracking, and I'd barely lifted a finger after that first move. I finished my coffee, set the mug down, and leaned back. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the guy who got left behind. I felt like the guy who'd won. And I wasn't done yet. I was still at Miles' place, sprawled on his couch with a second cup of coffee, when I heard the tires screech outside. It was just past 10 a.m., the sun climbing higher, and I'd been half lost in the quiet, scrolling through more X comments about the party. The post had hit some crazy number, tens of thousands of likes now, and I was still wrapping my head around it when that sound cut through the morning. I sat up, peering through the blinds, and there it was, Brielle's car, the same one they'd driven off in yesterday, pulling up fast in front of my house down the street. The doors flew open, and out they came, Brielle first, her face tight with fury, then Cameron, stumbling behind her, eyes red like she'd been crying. I set the mug down slow, my pulse kicking up. They were back, and they were pissed. Miles joined me at the window, letting out a low whistle. Here comes the storm, he said, smirking, but I didn't laugh. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, and nodded at him. Let's go see what they want. We walked the short distance back to my place, the air cool against my skin, my steps steady even though my gut was twisting. I wasn't scared, not exactly, just ready. They'd seen the photo, the post, the fallout. They knew what I'd done, and now it was time to face it. As we got closer, I saw them at the front door, Brielle banging on it with her fist, Cameron pacing behind her, phone in hand like she was texting someone to fix this. Too late for that. The door was locked. Trina had made sure of it last night, and I stopped a few feet away, crossing my arms. Looking for something? I called out, loud enough to make them spin around. Brielle's eyes locked on me first, narrow and blazing, her lips pressed into a thin line. Cameron froze, her phone dropping to her side, tears streaking her face. You, Brielle shouted, storming toward me, her heels clicking hard on the pavement. What the hell did you do? She got close, too close, and I stepped back, keeping my voice calm. I threw a party, I said. You gave me the idea, remember? Left me here to be useful. So I was. Her face twisted, like she couldn't believe I'd talk back, and she jabbed a finger at my chest. You humiliated us. My clients aren't answering calls. Clark won't even text me back. Good. I cut in, and she stopped, mouth open. Cameron rushed over then, her voice shaking. Jake broke up with me because of you. He saw that stupid list, and now he's gone, and my job's a mess. She was sobbing, loud and messy, but I didn't flinch. You humiliated yourselves, I said, looking between them. You handed me that list. You laughed about it. I just let everyone else see what you really are. Brielle's hand shot up like she might slap me, but Miles stepped in, towering over her, and she dropped it fast. You're a bastard, she hissed. You ruined everything. I shook my head. You made your own bed. Enjoy lying in it. They didn't leave. Not right away. Brielle started yelling again. About her reputation, her business, how I'd destroyed her life, while Cameron sank onto the porch steps, crying into her hands. I stood there, letting it wash over me, their words bouncing off like rain on a roof. I'd heard it all before, the guilt trips, the blame, but this time, it didn't stick. I pulled out my phone, dialed the security company we'd used years ago for a break-in scare, and put it on speaker. Yeah, hi, I said, loud enough for them to hear. I've got 2 people refusing to leave my property. Can you send someone over? Brielle's eyes widened, her rant cutting off mid-sentence. You're calling security on us? She snapped. It's my house too. I shrugged. Not today it isn't. Cameron jumped up then, lunging for my phone like she could stop it. I yanked it back, and Miles grabbed her arm. Not hard, just enough to hold her still. Let go, she screamed, thrashing, but he didn't budge. Calm down, he said, voice low, and she finally went limp, sobbing again. The security guy on the line said they'd be there in 10 minutes, and I hung up, slipping the phone into my pocket. Brielle stared at me, her face pale now, the fight draining out of her. You're really doing this, she said, almost a whisper. Yeah, I replied. I really am. Cameron wiped her eyes, glaring at me through the tears. You're going to regret this, she muttered, but it sounded hollow, like she didn't believe it herself. They didn't wait for security to show up. Brielle grabbed Cameron's arm, pulling her toward the car. We're not done with you, Brielle threw over her shoulder, but I didn't answer. I watched them climb in, the engine roaring to life, and then they were gone again, peeling out like they'd come in. Miles let out a laugh, shaking his head. That was intense, man. I nodded, exhaling slow, the tension easing out of my shoulders. Yeah, but it's done. The street was quiet again, the house looming behind me, and I felt it, the weight of their pride crashing down, piece by piece. They'd lost control, and I'd taken it back. For good. I stood on the porch after Brielle and Cameron sped off, the echo of their tires fading into the morning. Miles was still beside me, hands in his pockets, rocking back on his heels like he was waiting for the next round. You think they'll come back? He asked, squinting down the street. Maybe, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. But I'm not waiting to find out. My phone was still warm in my pocket from the security call, and I knew it was time to stop playing defense. They'd stormed in here thinking they could yell their way out of this, but I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was moving forward. I turned to Miles. I need to call my lawyer. You good to hang out a bit longer? He grinned. Wouldn't miss it. We went inside, the house still smelling faintly of last night's party, beer and fried food clinging to the air. I grabbed my laptop from the basement office, set it up on the kitchen table, and scrolled through my contacts until I found Alicia Chin. She'd helped me with a contract dispute a few years back. Sharp, no nonsense, the kind of lawyer who didn't waste time. I dialed her number, put it on speaker so Miles could hear, and waited. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey, it's been a while," she said, her voice crisp through the line. "What's up?" I took a deep breath and laid it all out. The birthday setup, the chore list, the party, the viral post, the blow-up this morning. I didn't sugarcoat it, didn't leave anything out. When I finished, there was a pause, then she let out a low, "Well, damn." Miles smirked across the table, but I stayed focused. "I want a legal separation," I said. "Maybe more. I just need out." Alicia didn't hesitate. "Good call," she said. "And we're not just going to separate. We're going to protect everything you've built. You own this house jointly." I nodded, then remembered she couldn't see me. "Yeah, it's in both our names." "Okay," she said, and I could hear her typing. "First thing, we secure your financials, bank accounts, credit cards, anything joint. Then we change the locks. I'll draft a cease and desist for Cameron too. She's got no legal right to be here. And if she's trying to access your stuff, that's a problem." I leaned back, feeling a weight lift. "You can do all that?" "Oh, I can do more than that," she said, and I believed her. By noon, Alicia had emailed me a plan. She'd already contacted my bank. Some legal magic I didn't fully understand, and frozen the joint accounts so Brielle couldn't touch them. I called a locksmith from down the street, a guy named Tony I'd met at a barbecue once, and he showed up an hour later with his tools. "Heard you're having a rough one," he said, nodding at the house as he worked the front door. "Something like that," I replied, watching him swap out the old lock for a shiny new one. He did the back door too, handed me the keys, and said, "Good luck, man." I slipped him an extra 20, grateful for the speed. The house was mine now, at least until the lawyers sorted it out, and that felt like a win. Alicia wasn't done, though. She called me back that afternoon, her voice all business. "Cameron tried logging into your email," she said. "I got a ping from your account security. You didn't give her access, right?" I frowned, my stomach twisting. "No way." "Thought so," she said. "I've sent her a cease and desist, certified mail and email. If she keeps it up, we've got grounds for harassment." Brielle's been quiet so far, but I'm betting she's just regrouping. I thanked her, hung up, and changed every password I had: email, bank, even the streaming apps. It was tedious, but it felt good, like I was building a wall they couldn't climb. Then Brielle tried her move. I was making a sandwich when I saw her post on X, a long thread about misunderstandings and exaggerations, painting herself as the victim. "I've always supported him," she wrote. "This is just a rough patch." I snorted, scrolling through it, but the replies weren't buying it. Someone had posted the chore list, must have snapped a pic at the party, and another link to the viral photo. "Rough patch?" One comment read. "You left him with chores on his birthday, lady." I didn't need to chime in. The truth was out there, loud and clear, and people were rallying behind me. I wasn't just the guy who got screwed over anymore. I was the guy who fought back, and they loved it. Alicia called again that evening, updating me. "Separation papers are in progress," she said. "We'll file soon." "And the house?" "I'm pushing to keep it in your name. You've paid most of the mortgage, right?" "Yeah," I said, remembering all those late nights at work to cover the bills while Brielle shopped with Cameron. "Then we've got a strong case," she said. "Sit tight. This is just the start." I hung up, staring at the new keys on the table, the laptop still open with Brielle's failing PR stunt. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving their mess, I was taking control. And it felt damn good. I woke up the next morning in my own bed, the new locks on the doors giving me a strange kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. The house was quiet, no slamming doors, no sharp voices barking orders. Just me, the hum of the fridge, and the faint chirp of birds outside. I rolled over, grabbed my phone off the nightstand, and saw the notifications piling up, texts, emails, more ex-chatter about the party. I didn't dive in right away. I got up, shuffled to the kitchen, and made coffee, letting the routine settle me. The world was still spinning out there, but in here, I could breathe. For now, that was enough. I was halfway through my mug when the first big update hit. Miles texted me a screenshot from some local news site. Sister-in-law fired after viral birthday scandal. My eyebrows shot up, and I clicked the link. Cameron's company had cut her loose, citing conduct unbecoming after the ex post, and the chore list went public. The article didn't name me, But it didn't have to. Everyone knew. I leaned back in my chair, letting that sink in. She'd built her whole life around that job, strutting around like it made her untouchable. Now it was gone, and I didn't feel sorry for her. Not one bit. She'd spent years treating me like dirt under her shoe. This was just the mess coming back to her. Brielle's world was cracking too. I scrolled X later that morning and saw the chatter. Clients dropping her, deals falling through. She'd posted again, a weak apology about learning from mistakes, but the replies were brutal. Too late. You don't get to play victim now. I sipped my coffee, watching it unfold, feeling the weight of it all shift. They'd built their lives on this shiny, fake image. Brielle the perfect businesswoman, Cameron the cool sister, and I'd torn it down with one night, one list, one photo. I didn't gloat, didn't post anything myself. I didn't need to. The truth was doing the work for me. Then my phone buzzed with an email, and I almost dropped the mug. It was from Clark Ellison, Brielle's mentor, the big shot executive she'd worshipped for years. I opened it, my hands steady but my heart thumping. "I've followed this mess online," he wrote. "You should have left her years ago. She never deserved your loyalty. Take care of yourself." I read it twice, then a third time, letting the words settle. Clark wasn't just some guest at the party. He was the guy Brielle had spent her career trying to impress, the one she name-dropped every chance she got. And now he was on my side. I set the phone down, staring at the wall, a mix of shock and something else, validation, maybe, washing over me. It meant more than I'd expected. I was still processing that when the doorbell rang. I froze, half expecting Brielle or Cameron to come storming back, but I checked the peephole and saw her. Brielle, alone, standing on the porch. Her hair was messy, her eyes puffy like she'd been crying, and she wasn't in her usual polished getup, just jeans and a hoodie. I opened the door, keeping my face blank. "What do you want?" I asked, not stepping aside. She hugged her arms to her chest, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Can I come in?" she said, her voice shaky. "We need to talk." I didn't move. "Talk here." She swallowed, glancing around like she was afraid someone might see. "I'm sorry," she started, tears welling up. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. The trip, the list, it was Cameron's idea, and I just went along with it. I didn't think. You didn't think I'd fight back." I finished for her, my voice flat. She flinched, nodding. "I messed up," she said. "My clients are gone. Clark hates me. Everything's falling apart. I just want to fix this. Please." I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I'd loved once, the woman I'd let walk all over me, and felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a cold, clear nothing. "You don't get to fix this," I said. "You made your choices. Live with them." Her face crumpled, more tears spilling out. "I still love you," she whispered. I shook my head. "You don't. You never did. Go home, Brielle." She stood there a second longer, like she thought I'd cave, but I didn't. I shut the door, locked it with the new key, and walked back to the kitchen. My coffee was cold now, but I didn't care. I heard her car start up outside, then fade away, and that was it. She was gone. I sat down, opened my laptop, and checked my email again. Alicia had sent a draft of the separation papers, clean and simple, ready to file. I skimmed it, feeling the finality of it settle in. This wasn't just unraveling their lives, it was unraveling mine too, pulling me free from the tangle I'd been stuck in for too long. By evening, the X-storm had calmed a little, but the damage was done. Cameron was jobless, Brielle's business was tanking, and I was sitting here, alone but not lonely. I microwaved some leftovers, ate at the table, and let the quiet wrap around me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next hit. I was done taking it, and they were done dishing it out. I woke up the next day with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, the kind that comes when you've finally stopped running from what's real. The house was still mine, the new locks holding firm, and the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine to fill. I got out of bed, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. Alicia's email from last night was still there, the separation papers attached, but I wasn't ready to sign yet. I wanted more than just a break. I wanted out, clean and final. I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste waking me up, and dialed her number. "Morning," she said when she picked up, her voice sharp like always. "You ready to push this further?" "Yeah," I said. "Let's make it a divorce." She didn't miss a beat. "Smart move," she said, and I could hear her shuffling papers. "I'll rework the papers today." "You sure about alimony?" "You could ask for something She's got income, even if it's tanking. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see. No, I don't want her money. I just want her gone. Alicia paused, then said, fair enough. What about the house? I looked around, the kitchen I'd painted, the floors I'd scrubbed, the walls I'd hung pictures on. I want to keep it, I said. I've paid most of it anyway. Good, she replied. We've got the records to prove it. I'll have the papers ready by noon, courier them over? Yeah, I said. Thanks, Alicia. She hung up, and I set the phone down, feeling the decision lock into place. This was it, the last cut. The courier showed up right on time, a kid in a blue uniform handing me a thick envelope. I signed for it, shut the door, and tore it open at the table. The divorce papers stared back at me, pages of legal words, dates, my name next to Brielle's, all leading to one thing, freedom. I read through it slow, making sure it was right, no alimony, the house in my name, a clean split. It was. I grabbed a pen, signed where Alicia had marked, and slid it back into the envelope. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. It felt like checking off a box on a list I'd been carrying too long. I called the courier back, watched him drive off with it, and that was that. Brielle would get her copy soon, and then it'd be real. I didn't expect her to show up again, not after yesterday, but around 3 p.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked out the window, her car, her alone again, stepping out with a bag slung over her shoulder. She didn't knock this time, just stood there, staring at the door like she could will it open. I opened it anyway, keeping my distance. What now? I asked, my voice tired but firm. She looked up, her eyes red but dry, her face pale. I got a call from my lawyer, she said, quiet. You're filing for divorce. Yeah, I said, not breaking eye contact. I am. She shifted her weight, clutching the bag tighter. Can we talk about it? Just for a minute. I didn't want to let her in, but I stepped aside, nodding toward the living room. She walked past me, her step slow, and sat on the edge of the couch like she didn't belong there anymore. She didn't. I didn't want this, she said, staring at the floor. I know I screwed up, but I didn't think it'd end like this. I stayed standing, arms crossed. You didn't think, I said. That's the problem. You and Cameron treated me like a chore for years, and that list was just the last straw. I'm done, Brielle. She looked up, her lip trembling. I can change, she said. I'll do better. We can fix it. I shook my head. You don't get it. I don't want to fix it. I want to be free of it. She sat there, silent for a long stretch, then nodded, like she'd finally heard me. Okay, she whispered, standing up. I'll go. She moved toward the door, but I stopped her with one last thing. I pulled out my phone, opened the text I'd sent her after the party, and added to it. You treated me like a chore, I typed, reading it aloud as I went. Now I've checked you off my list. I hit send, watched her phone buzz in her bag, and saw her flinch when she glanced at it. Goodbye, Brielle, I said. She didn't say anything back, just walked out, got in her car, and drove away. I locked the door behind her, the new key clicking into place, and felt the air shift. It was over. I spent the rest of the day alone, not in a bad way, just taking it in. I cooked dinner, steak, nothing fancy, and ate at the table, the divorce papers envelope still sitting there like a trophy. My phone buzzed with a text from Miles, you good? And I replied, yeah, it's done. He sent back a thumbs up, and that was enough. I didn't need a crowd, didn't need noise. I just needed this, the quiet, the space, the knowing that I'd made my final move. They couldn't touch me anymore. And I was ready for whatever came next. I woke up a few weeks later to a morning that felt different, not because it was my birthday again, but because it was mine in a way it hadn't been before. The divorce papers were filed, the house was officially in my name, and Brielle and Cameron were out of my life for good. I decided to celebrate early, not with some big, forced thing, but with something real. I got out of bed, the floor cool under my feet, and headed to the kitchen. Coffee first, always coffee, and then I started planning. No chore lists, no fake trips, just me and the people who actually gave a damn. I texted Miles and Trina, backyard barbecue tonight. You in? And they both shot back a quick, hell yeah. That was all I needed. The day moved slow, easy, like I had all the time in the world. I ran to the store, grabbed burgers, hot dogs, some buns, and a case of beer, nothing fancy, just good stuff. Back home, I dragged the old grill out of the garage, scrubbed it down, and set it up in the backyard. The grass was a little overgrown. I hadn't mowed since the whole mess started, but it didn't bother me. I liked it wild, free, like it didn't have to answer to anyone. I pulled out a few folding chairs, set up a table with a cheap plastic cloth, and strung some old Christmas lights across the fence. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that made it better than anything Brielle ever planned. Miles showed up first, hauling a cooler of ice and a bag of chips. "Happy early birthday, man," he said, slapping my shoulder as he dropped the stuff by the grill. Trina rolled in next, carrying a tray of brownies she'd baked, her grin wide. "Couldn't let you have a party without dessert," she said, setting them down. We fired up the grill, the smell of charcoal and meat filling the air, and soon the backyard was alive, laughter, the crack of beer cans opening, music playing low from Miles' phone. A few other folks trickled in, guys from work, a neighbor who'd heard about the party mess and wanted to shake my hand. It wasn't a big crowd, maybe 10 people, but it felt full, real, like the kind of night I'd forgotten I could have. We ate, talked, laughed, nothing heavy, just easy stuff. Miles told a story about some dumb stunt we'd pulled in college, and Trina roasted me for burning a burger, but I didn't care. I flipped another one, watched the flames lick up, and felt light, lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, expecting another X notification. It wasn't. It was a text from some random number. "Saw your story online. You inspired me to leave my toxic ex. Thanks." I stared at it, then scrolled up, more like it, dozens over the past few days, people I didn't know saying I'd given them a push to walk away from their own messes. I didn't reply, just read them, letting it sink in. I wasn't a hero, wasn't trying to be, but it hit me anyway. Something I'd done for me had rippled out, touched lives I'd never see. The sun dipped low, painting the sky orange and pink, and Miles cranked the music up a notch. We sat around the table, picking at the brownies, the air cooling off as night crept in. "You ever think about what's next?" Trina asked, leaning back in her chair, her beer half gone. I shrugged, taking a sip of mine. "Not really. Just taking it as it comes." She nodded, like that made sense, and Miles chimed in, "Long as it's not more chore lists, you're golden." We laughed, the sound carrying over the fence, and I felt it. Freedom, real and solid, wrapping around me like the night air. Then the doorbell rang. I frowned, figuring everyone who mattered was already here, but I got up and headed inside. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery guy holding a box, so I opened the door. "You the birthday guy?" he asked, grinning. Yeah," I said, confused. He handed me the package, small, light, with my name on it, and took off. I brought it back to the yard, Miles and Trina crowding around as I tore it open. Inside was a folded black t-shirt, and when I shook it out, I laughed loud enough to startle the birds. Printed in bold white letters. "Trip for us? Cool. Party for me? Legendary." A note slipped out from Miles. "Wear it proud." I looked at him, grinning like an idiot, and he just shrugged, smirking. "Had to," he said. I pulled it on over my shirt, the fit perfect, and the group cheered, raising their drinks. We stayed out there late, the stars popping out one by one, the grill cooling down to embers. No fireworks in the sky, but it felt like they were inside me, bright, loud, alive. I didn't need a trip or a big show. I had this, friends, a backyard, a life I'd taken back. And when I finally crawled into bed that night, the t-shirt still on, I slept deep, peaceful, knowing I wasn't just free. I was me again.